Is this thing on?
Are you ready, Matt?
You're listening to Box Office Bingers
with Matt Diaz and Ernesto Santos.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Box Office Bingers.
And the only way that I know how to do it is to find you a bloody good dump.
He's my friend. I don't have friends. I got family.
I can do this all day.
You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
And we're back for another episode of Box Office Bingers. Matthew, I am so excited for this week's episode. You need to kick it off. Just tell us what we got and what special guests we have this week.
Oh, man. We are reviewing Dune Part 2. And a movie that is already deemed as a masterpiece with a lot of the reviews, but I guess we'll be the judge of that. But more importantly, we have a first-time guest onto the show, Chandler Sheppard, my good friend. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
Good. And the reason why we brought you on, because you have a massive collection of Dune books right behind you. There's
10 of them within reach. Yeah.
Are there really 10 books?
There's a lot more than that, but okay. The original run by the original author Frank Herbert, there are only 6. I have 3 copies of the first one, and then 2 copies of books 2 and 3, and then 1 copy of the other 3.
And this is why we brought you on, because not for. I'm assuming you have knowledge, but mainly because you have all the books. So I'm assuming you read them as well.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've read the first one a couple of times, and I've read each of the other ones once all the way through.
Okay. Well, that's good. And your knowledge is I'm waiting for, because Dune confuses the hell out of me. I try and I'm trying to keep up with it.
Even still, Matt?
Well, a little bit. It's better. We'll get into it. But let's talk about the movie first. Dune Part 2, starring Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Javier Bardem, Stellan Skarsgård, Austin Butler, Dave Bautista, Josh Brolin, Christopher Walken, and Florence Pugh. That is a stacked cast.
That's
right
absurd.
Understatement is to say the least.
That's true. It is understatement.
And also Anya Taylor-Joy. Surprisingly,
that's right. She had a brief cameo in the movie. I think a lot of people were speculating that she was in the movie, and then toward the press run, it was confirmed that she was, but it was also in an undisclosed role. And then obviously, when you saw the movie, you find out what it is.
Yeah, they tried to keep that a secret. I read some. There was a article from Hollywood Reporter where Denis Villeneuve was saying that that's something that they wanted to do because everything in Hollywood is the worst kept secret, and it was a nice surprise that he wanted to give to his fans for the movie. And
I guess in essence, I'm assuming a tease for Part 3 when we get there.
That's how they should have set up Zendaya in the first movie.
I mean, they kind of did. I mean,
she was her name was on the poster, and she was barely in the movie.
That's accurate.
I guess that's fair. She was in it.
She was in the beginning and in the end and in the dreams a lot. But she was just there for a face up until the very end. Written, directed by Denis Villeneuve. I think I said that wrong, but no. Dune. He directed and wrote Dune Part 1, Arrival, Sicario, and Blade Runner 2049. This guy's deep in sci-fi.
Also Arrival. I believe you said that. Yeah, you did say it. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, he knows sci-fi very well, and I don't think there's a bad movie in the bunch there. It was also written by John. How do you pronounce that? Spans. Spiats.
Spates, Spaihts.
Yeah,
sure.
I like yours better. He also wrote Dune Part 1, Prometheus, Doctor Strange, Passengers, and the 2017 The Mummy starring Tom Cruise. We can forgive him for that because all the other ones aren't that bad.
Nobody's perfect.
Everybody gets one, right?
Yeah, everyone gets one bad movie. It's okay. It's okay. Maybe he was just a contributing writer, not a full writer.
Yeah,
it's all right. Prometheus, well, that makes up for it a little bit, and Doctor Strange. But yeah, we're gonna be diving into Dune a little bit later. But I just want to kind of let the air out. Chandler, you said that you're gonna Dune all over this podcast. I just want to know what does that mean exactly, and should we be afraid of that?
You should always be afraid because this story is chunky.
That's a good word for it.
It is dense and chunky, and there's a lot going on. And I am gonna Dune all over your show, and I hope that's all right.
Hey,
well, I guess we don't really have a choice.
Like I want to say yes because it feels like it should be positive.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're down.
Yeah, I'm down to see where it goes.
He's like,
we're gonna find that out together.
It's gonna be an adventure for both of us. I'm assuming.
It's like, I think this is a good thing, right?
Yeah, this is supposed to be positive.
This is a positive, right? This is a positive show today, right?
Yeah.
Who's to say?
I guess time will tell.
And of course, as well as our movie review, we're going to be talking about that popcorn bucket also later on, because we can't not talk about that popcorn bucket. I feel like in some cases it's more popular than the movie, unfortunately. But anyway, we'll dive into all that a little bit later into the show. But first, we're going to be diving into a fun segment we like to call Whatcha Watchin. So Chandler, you are our guest. We'll start with you. What have you been watching?
Recently, I've been watching a lot of Psych. Comedy detective TV series that started in 2006, and they've had a bunch of movies and like little revivals and stuff. That show's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's just a really nice like procedural, like it's like a procedural cop show, but he's pretending to be a psychic detective, but he really just has really good abilities of like observation. And it's just a real fun little show.
I love it. I've seen it. It's great.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite, just kind of like turn your brain off, just chill, watch something fun kind of shows.
Yeah.
Is that really what the show's about? I had no idea. I thought he was a psychic.
No.
No. Like his dad is like a super cop, and so since he was a little kid, his dad has been training him to be like the world's greatest cop / detective.
Oh. Okay.
But he never wanted to do that, and then all of a sudden he just starts pretending to be a psychic and starts working with the Santa Barbara Police Department, and solves all their cases for them, basically.
It's pretty great. I've seen all the original stuff. I haven't seen anything post the revival.
I haven't either. So I'm working through the show right now, and then eventually gonna dip into like the movies and stuff like that.
Okay.
So you're basically all in on this at this point.
On Psych?
Yeah.
I love this show. It's really, really good.
It's interesting to go back and like discover an old show like that. I feel like it's not as common as, I guess for some people that's comfort food of like, I'm going to go back and watch an old show that I had already watched and enjoyed. But for someone to go back and watch it for the first time, I feel like that is not as common as it used to be. I feel like there's just so many shows out there that it's hard to be like, I'm not going to watch the new stuff. I'm going to watch something that came out like 12, 14 years ago.
Right. Well, and I've seen the original run of the show before, but I'm showing it to my girlfriend Lauren, and so like she's seeing it for the first time and like having a really good time with it.
Okay, then that's a little bit different. Then you're showing somebody else something that you really like. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah.
Right.
All right, what else you watched?
I've watched the first 2 episodes of the Avatar: The Last Airbender revival. or live action remake. And I'm reserving full judgment right now. I think the action stuff is cool. I think the show looks really good. I'll say that. To keep it more on the positive side, I think the show looks really, really good. My main problem so far, and I don't know if this improves later on, but it feels absolutely joyless in a way that the original show obviously was not. But I do think that's I think they're going for more of the sort of like the gritty reboot thing, which I thought we had moved past as a society, but apparently is still like still something that people are going for.
Interesting. I'm hearing, man, I know you've seen it, but I've heard like both things. Like I've heard some people say they love it and some people say, so I guess it's like you're on either side of the spectrum. But I mean, part of the story is Aang, like as a little kid, having to deal with this immense power and like him growing up. Is that element still in the story at all?
It is there. And again, I've only seen the first 2 episodes, so like I can't speak on it fully, but that element is still there. It feels a lot more spoon-fed so far, in that there are points where Aang literally barrels the camera and tells you that is what he is feeling, and so that feels a little strange. It feels a little bit like they're telling and not showing. But again, I'm waiting to fully judge the show until I've seen all of it.
Okay, that's fair.
But
I've Chandler, we've spoken about this before the recording, and I've watched the whole thing. I finished it, and I will say that I'm kind of 50-50 on the show as well. The first episode and also into the second episode, honestly, like the pilot's rough. The pilot's a rough watch. I feel like that it just nothing lands about that first episode to me, and it definitely feels like they were checking boxes at this point. It's like this is happening because it's supposed to happen. Yeah. Like these are the steps of the animated show, and we're just replicating that in a live action show. But I think over the course of the series, it does get better. So like there's a lot of cool moments in there. It is darker. There's like a full episode that just feels like a horror movie the entire time. And I was like if I was a kid watching this, I'd be like, this is kind of scary. Like there's like, so it's like there are some elements there that like obviously it's still meant for like, I feel like this is for like a teenage audience, but also kids can watch this too. But then there's some elements where it's like, I don't know about that one though, because that one, it's freaking me out, and I don't like it. And so, but like toward the end, I was able to appreciate what this show was, and like I loved the Fire Nation, that whole story. I think, for me, from what I remember from the first season of the animated series, was that I think this show did a better job of establishing the Fire Nation and like their problems and like their troubles, and like just showcasing Zuko and Iroh and the Fire Lord, and even did they showcase his sister in the first season? Zuko's sister, I forgot, Azula.
Azula,
I don't remember.
Yeah, like she comes up in the first season. From what I remember, it's been a couple of years since I've gone back to that show, but I feel like I remember her at least appearing in the first season.
Yeah, I just don't remember. Maybe like at the end or something, but I don't remember her being there. But like either way, she's a part of the first season here. Not extensively, but like you see her enough to like she is an established character by the end of the season. Right. So like all of that, like I really enjoyed that. I feel like they did a great job establishing the Fire Nation. Our team avatar, so to speak, specifically Aang and Katara, they really the acting's rough on them. You can tell they're really new actors, probably their first or maybe one of their first roles, definitely their biggest role. And it's rough to watch even throughout the whole season. Like there are elements in that show where it's like, I know what you're telling me and I know what I'm supposed to feel, but your delivery is really bad for me to feel that. And so that's a little bit, that kind of sucks in a way that these are our heroes and you're just not feeling what you should be feeling in these moments. And then also the show does move by pretty quick. So there are like, even Katara, for example, it's like she is moving through her waterbending throughout this season. And then by the end, like I'm supposed to believe that you're a master. And I don't believe that at all because, you know, I feel like there's supposed to be a couple months that goes by within certain episodes and like, oh yeah, no, I'm just good at this now. It's like, I don't know. Right. Last episode, you seem like you weren't good at this at all. And then next episode, you're like, boom, I got it.
Doesn't this one take place over the course of a year or
if it did,
it's not clear.
It's not clear. Yeah.
Got it.
But now how much of the original show do they tackle in the first season?
The first season.
Oh, so okay. So it's just season for season. Okay.
Yeah, it pretty much ends almost the exact same way as the animated show.
But I remember her not like fully getting her powers maybe until like the second or third season. I thought that was later. I thought that was later on because then she learns the blood bending and all that.
Well, I mean, I think by the end of the first season, she is maybe not a master, but like she is pretty skilled at waterbending by the end of the first season. At least has a good grasp on it at the very least. And she was excited to go to the northern tribe to learn even more. Whereas I think by the time we get there, it almost felt like that she was like at the top of her game. And I was like, I don't believe that. Like, especially where we were at the beginning of the season and also her delivery. And like, there's also so many other things going on that she is not the priority of this show. So we are just led to believe that in the background, she's been practicing.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's almost like a background kind of off screen. She's getting so much better. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so like, but we are really focused. Like I said, they focused a lot on the Fire Nation, and I was like, yeah, I guess if that's where your glory is, I would focus on that too. But I'm like 50-50. I do believe that given a season 2, they can be better.
So you think it's at least worth it for the second? You think you're on board for season 2?
Yeah, I didn't hate the show. I liked it. It's just like, also there's that expectations where like if you're solely comparing it on the animated series, a series that you loved, it's never going to compare to it. So like you got to just throw that expectation out the window. This is something it's similar, but it is different. So
that is really hard for people who grew up with it, like me. It's very hard to not be comparing every minute of it to the original. Of course. But that is something you kind of have to do because it is supposed to be like very much its own thing. So
yeah, and I it is hard because like you're like, well, they did it this way, that way, and there was a bit, Chandler, which I'll say for when you watch it, but they made an obvious point about the cabbages guy.
Oh, great.
Instead of like just letting it happen.
Right. It's almost like the fans know, and we're
like, oh, my cabbages. Okay.
We laugh, but you're not that far off.
Yeah. No, I figured.
It's kind of one of those moments where like you are definitely like looking at the camera and smiling when you're doing that, and it's just like, come on, this like, all right. It's again, I just prefer that it just came in organically instead of just like, and this one's for you guys.
Wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's not a bad show. I wouldn't call it like a priority watch. But if you it's 8 episodes, it's not that bad. And just out of curiosity, if you're looking like if you watch the first season, like, yeah, this ain't for me, you gotta power through it because it does get better. It does get better. Anything else, Chandler?
I've been reading through and watching the Lord of the Rings series, and that's been great. I never I tried watching the first movie when I was in like high school, and I fell asleep during it. I just couldn't get into it, and so for like 10 years or whatever, I have just kind of assumed like, yeah, I'm not really a Lord of the Rings person. And then I decided to start reading the books. And then just the other day, I finished the second book and then watched the first movie. And I mean, I've been missing out. It's really good. It's really, really good.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. Maybe
about a year ago.
Yeah, 6 months to a year ago, where I just decided to like, all right, I'm gonna reread I reread all the books, The Hobbit, and then all 3 Lord of the Rings, and then I rewatched all the movies, and I just had a completely different experience than the first time. Because the first time, my sister, I don't even know why she took me the second and third time, but all 3 movies, I fell asleep every single time.
I think you really have to be in the right headspace in the sense that you have to be willing to accept that you're just not going to understand a lot of stuff until you've heard it a few times. Because like when they start talking about, the land of Gondor and, son of Denethor and it's like all these like, it's just made up nonsense. And it's beautiful if you're in the headspace for it, but if you're not, it will knock you right out.
And to a certain extent, that's how Dune is. Like you just have to you just got to catch up on the lingo and just kind of, okay, this thing means that. Okay, got it. Moving on.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like it's not quite suspension of disbelief, but it's something very similar to that, where you just have to be willing to accept all of the like I said, all that chunky, dense, just information. Yeah. You have to be willing to accept it for sure.
So, I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but by reading the book, obviously it helps going into the movie. Do you see yourself where you would not have read the book and then still appreciate what the movie had to offer without the context?
I do think if I watched the movie again without reading the book, I think that I would not be as impressed by it. I think like, especially because in the case of at least Fellowship, there's a lot that they are sort of like, there's a lot of just like background stuff going on that like you have an appreciation for if you've read the book. But I think if I'm putting myself in the headspace of someone who has not read the book and is just watching it for the first time, I would imagine it just sounds like noise. Like in the sense that there's a direct reference to like the Sackville Bagginses in the Fellowship, which like if you're watching the movie without the context of like The Hobbit or the first book, it's something he just kind of says and then they move on from it and it never comes back up again. So like if you're the kind of person who's watching a movie and you're trying to figure out like all the little parts, that just kind of comes up and goes away, and then you're left with no more information. But with the background information, you know that that's like his cousins that have been trying to steal his money and his house for like decades. Yeah. And like they literally moved into his house while Bilbo was out on his own adventure. And like he had to fight to like get his house back for years, and like all this stuff that like there's all this rich story that if you're just watching the movie, it's like he says a name and then they move on. So I definitely like having read it gives me, I think, a lot more appreciation for it and makes me personally enjoy it a lot more.
With the extended editions, is there a way that you're just not watching that? He's like, you know what, I'm feeling for just like a shorter, non-4-hour version of this. I would just watch the non-extended version. I feel like once this is out, this is the only way to watch it.
Yeah.
Once the extended edition is out?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm watching the extended editions. I have not seen the theatrical cut. I would imagine like that sort of complaint that I have right there might go out the window with the standard edition. You know, because I'd imagine they cut a lot of that stuff for time.
True.
I think the extended edition really is for people who like have spent some more time with it and like, you know, they're getting those little moments and extra scenes and whatever because they like have context for it, I guess.
Yeah. No, Ernesto, like you said before, you've done this journey before. Like how much appreciation do you have for, like, after reading all 3 books and then watching the extended editions? Like, was this everything clear, or were you still trying to keep up with it as you were watching it?
I wasn't trying to keep up as much. By the time I got through the first book, the first movie, I was on board. It took a little bit of the first movie to like really cement everything in the movie version, but it helps you just appreciate it that much more. Even with the context of the book, you still had to get through that barrier of like, okay, what's this, what's that? A little bit. Just okay. making the initial like making the connections on who's who, and like what they cut out and what they changed. Which, I mean, it's a pretty true adaptation.
Yeah, well, and it's just a lot of information.
Yeah,
which is why like it takes, I think, a couple of go arounds to like fully lock in like how everything relates to everything else.
Yeah.
Which again is similar to Dune, where it's like you kind of have to get through the story a few times in order to really wrap your head around like how everything is related.
Yeah, and because I know Ernesto did it, you're doing it. I'm debating if I want to also do this Lord of the Rings journey because I have not. It's the only time I ever watched Lord of the Rings was in one day, a complete run through of the theatrical cuts, and it was just one long day. So all the whole story just feels like mush.
It's psychotic behavior for your first time.
Might as well get it over with. Just watch all of them. But yeah, also I was in high school again, so like it just wasn't. I was not setting myself up for success on that viewing.
No.
So now that I'm considering going back into it, Ernesto, did you do The Hobbit too, or no?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did all 6 movies?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I sure did.
Was it worth it for The Hobbit?
Yeah, absolutely.
As it was for Lord of the Rings? It was, okay.
Yeah, The Hobbit is great. The movie and the book.
Okay. I haven't heard a lot. I mean, I've seen The Hobbits before, more recently, and I feel like I was able to keep up with that more than I ever did with Lord of the Rings. But again, you heard my story with that, so that was on me. But
you're like just powering through, staring like eyes. Must make it on time.
Orange, you're strapped down.
Yeah.
Just kind of just shake. My precious.
I mean, Andy Serkis, what a fantastic
Andy
performance.
Serkis.
Like,
if you do go through the books, I recommend the audiobooks read by Andy Serkis.
100%. 100%.
Really, really incredible stuff happening in those audiobooks.
Yes. It's more of a performance than it is like somebody reading.
It's like a one-man show. Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've heard Ernesto, because you haven't actually read the book. You listened to the books.
Yes, I did. Andy Serkis.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Talk to me in the car. As himself and as Gollum.
Yes. And then Chandler, you're actually reading, and you were saying that you were having a different experience as opposed to listening to it.
Yeah. Personally, so the Andy Serkis audiobook is very fun. But I think for me, being able to sit and spend time with it and focus on it and read it, it helps me just like lock in all the information a little bit better.
Oh yeah.
Because it's very easy. like when you're doing other things and listening to the audiobook, it's really easy to kind of like drift off, especially when he starts getting deep into the just high fantasy like nonsense words. It's really easy for your mind to drift, whereas like if you're sitting and reading it, you don't really have much of an option other than to just sit there and stare at it and start to lock that stuff in. So like
I'm not wrong.
I'm having a little bit more fun with like reading it.
Yeah, he's not wrong. There have been many times where I've had to like rewind. I had to like I was like, I was listening and I go, oh shit, I wasn't paying attention, and then I got to rewind like 5 minutes.
Like, what were you? Wait, am I listening to something?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's the thing is like it's so easy for it to just become like nothing. Then you realize, like to your point, you realize it's been minutes since you've actually understood a word, and then and you kind of have to reset and lock back in.
But either way,
it's so good. But it's so easy to not understand and not get
it's
it
worth,
and not pay attention. But it's so good.
It's worth the rewinds.
Yeah, one of these days I will do this, because it's funny. I think I told you this, Ernesto, but I didn't say no to like a good deal. I saw that they had the extended edition of the Lord of the Rings trilogy in 4K, and you can get all of them on Vudu for $15.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, you know what? I don't remember liking these movies, but I'm going to buy it anyway because that's a good deal. Yeah. And eventually I might want to watch them. And if I do, I'll have it in the best quality in the extended editions, and it'll be great. That was probably like 3 or 4 years ago when I did that. And we're still thinking about it. We're still there.
Past Matt is always looking out for future Matt.
That's the same way for me in video games.
Yes.
Past Matt's always looking out for future Matt. Even hey, you know that game that you want to play? Yeah. It's like it's like $30 now. It's like, oh cool, I'm gonna go buy it. Are you gonna play it? No, why would I do that? No.
Still getting caught up on all the hottest releases of 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like 5 games that I own right now, and there's probably more that I have yet to play. I will get there. I think I ended up playing. Let's see. I think God of War, like the new one, not Ragnarok, but the one before that, I think came out like in 2017, and I finally played it 4 years after its release. I was like, now it's a good time, and I've owned it for probably 3 of those years.
And I've got like 3 of those games like that. One of them is that one. Survivor game.
Yeah.
And then the one I'm playing now is The Last of Us 2.
Oh wow. Yeah, that came out about 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago for Last of Us 2.
Well, this is the remaster. This is the PS5 remastered re-release.
Oh, okay. Did you end up playing Spider-Man 2?
I did. I beat it. It was a pretty great game.
Okay.
They're actually, what is it? March 7th, Insomniac is going to release the first update to the game. So that's like the game plus,
nice.
More suits, hopefully some DLC. It's a pretty great game.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm behind on that, and I bought it day one too. I was like,
could have waited. I
was like,
although it's probably still full price by now.
Well, I had a gift card for the PlayStation Store, so I ended up only spending like $10 on it. So it's not like I spent like the full 70 or 80. But I wanted the pre-order bonus that came with the game that you could only buy if you bought it from the PlayStation Store, and from my understanding, and then I did, and then I was like, all right, I have them for later. But I'll get there. Like I always prioritize like when you just sit down on the couch, like what am I going to do? I want to watch a movie. That seems less work for me right now than, because I feel like when I play a video game, you got to like I got to get ready for it. I don't know.
Well, especially you
gotta lock in.
Especially you that plays on the easiest setting. Like you play for the story. So it's like, do you want to work for your story, or do you want to have the story be told to you? It's like, what mood am I in?
Yeah. I always play the easiest. Yeah. Like, why am I trying this hard? I don't need to try this hard.
I want the challenge. Whereas me is like the exact opposite. Like, I try.
It's too much work. I just want to get through this, but also have fun. Like, why do I have the option to take down a person in 10 moves when I can do it in 3. I don't know why do people put themselves through this.
Why do I want the stress?
Yeah. This is time consuming.
The stress is good for you, Matt.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. But then also there's always the option in the Spider-Man games where it's like, do you want to just like fast forward to that destination? It's like, no, I want to swing over there because that's more fun that way.
Give me at least give me that fun.
Yeah. But yeah, anything else, Chandler, that you've been watching?
I don't think so right now.
Okay. Ernesto,
I think I've been pretty consumed with that stuff.
So I've got 2. The one me and my wife just started, as you can see. We're huge love Yellowstone, the series from Taylor Sheridan. So we just started 1883, and it's about that family crossing the Oregon Trail to eventually go to their land that becomes the Dutton Ranch. And it is, we only watched the pilot so far, but it is intense. It is just like very, like right off rip, the opening scene of the pilot is incredible. Just the fight between the Comanches and them raiding this coach traveling across, just kind of really highlighting the horrors of how scary it was for these people to just travel across West. And Sam Smith, he plays sheriff of this town where he helps people transport across the Oregon Trail, and it showcases like these immigrant German family. They have all their stuff. They have all this stuff they have to lug across. They have no kind of survival skills. He's like, you're not gonna make it. You're literally gonna go out there and die. You're gonna get robbed. Like, you don't have enough. You don't know how to ride horses. So how are you gonna pull all this stuff? And just like taking the time that maybe people, like, we hear about how hard it was, but just having that exposition of them showing it just really set the tone for the show. And like Faith Hill and Tim McGraw, who I don't know if I've seen them in anything else, and only knowing that they're country singers, but they are absolutely fantastic actors in this. It is really, really well done. I actually think this, even just based off the pilot, is way better than the Yellowstone series altogether.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you watch, that's like 5 seasons worth of entertainment. You're like, that one episode is better than 5 seasons worth of that show.
I don't know what it is, but you know, you can just tell when you watch something, and you can tell when there's just been a little bit more care and attention to everything. I mean, it's a timepiece, so the costume pieces are fantastic. The production design is fantastic. You don't question that you're not in 1883. It's really, really well done. And I'm just a Taylor Sheridan fan. I mean, like, Hell or High Water is a fantastic movie. Yellowstone's good. I finished his Lioness series. I found out I was watching more of his shows even before I knew that he was a creator.
Yeah, I'm looking him up now. Yeah, he was the writer for Hell or High Water. Was he a director too?
I believe so, yeah.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't?
No, he was not.
Okay, so
no.
he wrote it. He writes all his own
but
stuff.
He also,
his shows, he writes everything. He writes everything.
I also saw that he's the writer for Sicario as well. Speaking of Denis Villeneuve, Wind River. I really did like Wind River. He did Without Remorse, For Those Wish Me Dead, and then 1883. He did Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone. Mayor of Kingstown, which is entering its 2nd season with Jeremy Renner. Like, he's in bed with Paramount, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna keep putting out your shit because it come like even his ratings like 7, 8, 8, 8, 9. Like, he shows results.
He crafts a fantastic story. And then the Lioness, I don't know if Lioness is on there too, but
yep.
That's with what's her name? Gamora.
Yeah,
Zoe Saldana.
Zoe Saldana.
She is Her, Nicole Kidman, they're both fantastic in that series.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman as well.
Briefly, but not more so Nicole Kidman and oh my god. Zoe Saldana. Excuse me, sorry.
They put Morgan Freeman on the poster, so he's got to be a main lead, right?
I mean, you have him just for that voice. But it is fantastic. I highly recommend it. Like, you almost don't even need to watch Yellowstone to watch and enjoy this. Like it.
And so, do you feel like this is warranted though? Because obviously Yellowstone was a huge success and still is. And then now you have 2 spinoffs. You have 1883, and you have 1923 with Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren as well. And do you feel like this is necessary added content to complement Yellowstone?
Yes, like without question. Like that is 100%. Like I mean, because Yellowstone is ending. I believe they have one more season, and then they're in early talks for a spinoff that's going to lead Matthew McConaughey, which I'm sure I'm on board for that. You just like if that ends up panning out,
all right.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I mean, this is just it is so good. It's so good. I can't wait to continue. Like I'm all in.
Isn't I don't know if this is him or not. I'm trying to. Doesn't look like it. No, the Horizon show, the movie. Is that based off his character from Yellowstone, Kevin Costner? He's coming off the movie called Horizon: an American Saga.
Oh, that's his cowboy movie that isn't he writing and directing that?
He's directing yes.
it. This is like his debut, right? No, I think
it's
related. This is just what he like. These are like the movies that he likes to do. But that's why he's late. That's part of the reason why he's leaving Yellowstone is because he wanted to finish doing this project. He really wanted to hone in on this project.
Oh. For some reason, I thought this was related.
No,
like he.
Unless I'm wrong. I mean, not from what I've heard.
No, I'm looking at IMDb right now. Ty Sheridan is nowhere involved in this. I just figured it was just weird because it was like Horizon the American Saga Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. The first chapter is being released in June. The second chapter is released in August. I just thought that this was a spinoff from Yellowstone, but I can see that it's not now.
Kevin Costner likes being a cowboy.
I guess so. Hey, when you like a thing, who am I to tell you what to do?
I mean, he's fantastic in the Yellowstone series. That's not to knock Yellowstone. Yellowstone is incredible. It's a great storyline.
Yeah.
But it's more of a procedural, whereas this has a definitive like. I don't know. I don't know for sure if they're gonna do a second season, but obviously it's gonna end. It's not gonna. They're not gonna just keep pumping these out. Like it might be. They might do like maybe 3 or 4 seasons, and then that'll be it. And then the same thing with what is it, 1923?
Yeah, they're titled. They're listed as a miniseries, so I don't think there's anything more after that.
Yeah, he's not one to just continually just pump shit out for no reason. Like he definitely ends his shows, so I'm all for it.
Yeah. 1923 is also titled as a miniseries, so yeah.
Other than that, the only other thing, Matt, based off your recommendation, I watched on Hulu. I watched Self-Reliance, Jake Johnson's directorial debut, and I liked it. It was a fun time. I had a really fun time watching it. It's very silly. Another one like those situations you just kind of have to just take it for what it is. It's like, okay, this is just obviously this is not realistic at all.
But it's funny
fun,
though.
But it's a fun movie,
Yeah.
But what I do like about his writing is that he does kind of give you these moments of where he's exploring like what it is to be lonely and like why it is important to have human connection. Just the fact that he was even able to translate that across this silly movie. I think that speaks volumes. I mean, I've always appreciated him as an actor, and this was a great first outing for him.
Yeah, I do think that I think he did a great job, and also like just exploring loneliness over the setting of like these random people that you can't see are trying to kill him for sport for a month. And if you win $1 million, but I don't think it's worth it, by the way. And I was like, $1 million? That's it? It's like this, like Jake Johnson signs up for this, like, dark web game where you have people that are going to try to kill you, but they can't kill you unless you're with somebody. So if you're standing next to somebody, they can't kill you. But if you're alone, then they have every right to like kill you, I guess. But you can't see these people. But there's also ninjas that are part of the game.
Production assistant ninjas.
Production assistants, yeah, that's what they called
him. He just walks up to him. He's sleeping. He goes, "Wake up," or he says his name. He's like, Jesus. He's like, "Show me the ninjas," and then they just like appear out of like random spaces everywhere. It was. I was rolling. It was pretty funny. It was pretty great.
There were like 6 of them that came out. And it was like, we're rooting for
and it's the I don't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, but it's from Stranger Things, the guy with the long hair.
Yeah, he had the pizza. He was the pizza person, pizza guy.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's a good movie. I enjoy, and also it's quick too.
Yeah, I was like in and out. I was like, this is great.
In and out. Yeah.
Self-contained story, in and out, and I didn't mind that you kind of got a vague ending about how about what was going to happen, and I guess I was fine with that. Christopher Lloyd makes a cameo. Andy Samberg and Wayne Brady all make a cameo in this movie.
and Wayne Brady and Andy Samberg came as themselves. Yeah. with Christopher Lloyd being
his dad,
silly old man.
Just being a silly old fella.
Yeah. I don't even know what movie he'd think he's in anymore. He's just reading lines at this point. It's okay. We still like him. But yeah, is that all?
Yes. Oh, and the actor's name is Eduardo Franca. He was a PA ninja.
PA ninja. Got
it. Title in the movie. Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. Yeah, I went to the theater for this one, and I wish I didn't. I saw.
Well, now I know how you feel.
Yeah, I saw Ethan Coen's new film Drive Away Dolls. In the trailer, it's very specific that it's not the Coen brothers; it's a Coen brother.
Yeah.
Which have done before. They've separated and made their own movies. And this one maybe I was watching this. I was like, maybe you need your brother back on this, because it was a rough watch for me. It was very silly. It's very campy. It's also, the trailer was very misleading on what this was, and I feel like that was part of it. You also had these like wacky transitions that it feels like when you go into like Premiere or like those editing softwares and they recommend that, or like you can play around with like crazy editing things.
Ooh,
and the editor there was like, let's do all of them. And I was like, what are we doing right now? There was a point where like the frame just kind of came in and went like that. I'm not sure how to explain it. And then it just like shook a little bit. It was like boing, and I was like, what the fuck is that? What are we doing here?
So it's very silly.
And it's very silly, and it did not land for me at all. The whole movie was also very misleading, because just a brief overview. You have these two girls that are looking to get out of their hometown, and they just want to drive and go to one of the girls' aunt's house to kind of get away, start a new life, all that stuff, because they weren't really happy where they were. So they go to what I guess it's called a drive-away facility. Basically, they want to go rent a car, but they call it a drive-away. And they say they're going to Tallahassee, and then the guy give them the keys and they go off. The other story that's happening is, I guess the guy behind the counter was supposed to give the keys to people that were going to Tallahassee, because inside the trunk of that vehicle was a box that needs to get to Tallahassee, and it needs to get there, promptly. So basically, he gave the keys to the wrong people, because then shortly after they left, a bunch of goons come in and were like, we're going to Tallahassee. And he's like, okay. And it's like, I already gave it to the girls. They're like, what girls? And so like now it becomes a road trip movie where they're going, and then the other goons are kind of following along. And then where I feel like the part I did not know was that these girls are since they're going on a road trip, the one is trying to get the other one laid, and they're visiting different gay bars because they're both lesbians. And so now this movie turns into, we need to get her laid because the other one's always having sex. And so I was like, okay, all right. So not what I was expecting for like the middle of this movie to be about. And then eventually they open the trunk, because they didn't before, and they find two things in there. One, the more important thing, there was a briefcase in there. There's two cases in there. And I mean, I can tell you this movie if you want. I don't know if either one of you had any.
I'm never gonna see it. We can put a mild spoiler.
Yeah, probably not.
We can put a mild spoiler warning. I saw the trailer and I was like, definitely not in the theaters, but maybe one day. But I had no interest. So
just to drive this point home, like I can talk spoilers if you want.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, all right. So spoilers on this movie. So the beginning of the movie, Pedro Pascal's heads get cut off,
Oh.
Like they just chop his head off in a very like wacky 1950s like he's like scared for his life running down an alley. Some guy shoots him, then this cuts his head off. So then his head is in a box that's in the trunk. But there's also a briefcase in there that we don't know what is inside. And so the whole part of the movie was that you think the big thing that they're shoveling is the head of Pedro Pascal, but it's really about what's inside the briefcase. And again, spoilers, what's inside the briefcase, and this is when the movie gets really silly, and this is kind of where it lost me, was a bunch of dildos inside the briefcase. And I was like,
that's hey dog, that's funny.
Yeah.
See that big fake penis? That's funny.
Chandler's like, wait a minute, that's comedy.
It's like whoa, now slow down there. You should have led with that.
So so like I feel like the severed head and the whole thing at the beginning of the movie was just the MacGuffin of it, like the misdirect, because you think that's the big thing. But it's all about the dildos that are inside that briefcase. And the dildos were molds of famous senators that they didn't want to get exposed. And one of the senators is Matt Damon. And they're very precious about these molds and they don't want it to go out. And that's kind of the whole stick of the movie.
And why do they have molds of their penises made then? If this is not something
that's the part where I checked out at that point because I don't really care. I think there was a reason why, but I forgot what it was.
Okay.
And again, the movie's pretty quick. It was like an hour 20. So like it was a quick watch, but like you had too many things going on. I feel like the classic what's in the briefcase is very Conan-esque. Like feels very like Fargo to me in a way, but also you have just like these whacking editing moves, these crazy storyline, and everyone else is overacting for no reason. None of that really just land for me, and I wish I did not go to the theater and watch this. I would have rather just if I was curious, I rather would have just watched it at home. But because it was a Conan brother and I had some time to kill, I was like, you know what, this is short enough that I can squeeze this. Before the other movie I watched that day was Perfect Days, and I think I ended up missing the first 5 minutes of the movie because I was timing it really close to it. And I was like, man, I'm sure the first 5 minutes of Perfect Days was going to be way better than the whole movie of this.
Well, obviously.
So anyway, so there's that movie that I watched. And then the other thing that I watched, and I watched all of it, was Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I know, Chandler, you said you watched the first couple of episodes of this?
I did watch the first few episodes.
How far did
you said you finished it?
Yeah. How far did you get on the show?
I think I got through, I want to say episode 3 or 4.
Okay, so about halfway.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's like the second half was much stronger than the first half. I feel like it took a minute for me to get to what this. It took a minute for me to get the point of the show, and then go ahead.
I did notice that I was enjoying it, but I did feel like there was something that just hadn't clicked yet. It felt like there was another shoe that needed to drop that just hadn't dropped yet. I felt like it was holding something back. So it's good to know that it kind of clicks as you keep watching it.
Did you see the episode where they met the other agents?
No.
Okay, so you're not that far yet either. So you're the first 3 then. Okay, so sorry if I spoiled that. Sorry.
I know there are other agents because like the first scene of the show is like other agents.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. But yeah, okay, so you're about the first 3. I think what I enjoyed more about it, and I'm even seeing this in the titles of each episode, it's going through the motions of being a relationship under the backdrop of being a spy show.
Yes.
And that's the part that it took me around. Like honestly, when where I finally understood that is where Sarah Paulson comes into play. Ernesto.
Really?
It took me that long to get like, oh, this is what we're doing here. Okay. Like it took me a while to get there. I was like, no, okay, now I appreciate it. But like I was seeing hints of it, but once they were sitting there, that's when it really clicked for me of this is what the show is about. Ernesto, like I know, were you on board from the beginning?
Yeah. Episode 1, I really enjoyed it. I thought the whole season was great because of that. Like it's really a show about the beginnings of them meeting in this marriage under the backdrop of them being assassins.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole thing. And like the way that they told that story, I'm very curious of why what's her name? Fleabag.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Thank you. Yes, because she was supposed to be Jane in this scenario, and she backed out over creative differences. And I want to know what she thought this was, or what she wanted this show to be, because like I like this version of the show on how they were able to tackle certain things under the backdrops of them being assassins. And so like you see them pretty much as like it's, and there's also in the sense is very relatable that way for anyone who's in a relationship of just being like, yeah, these are the things that you would go through if you were in, well, these are some of the things that you could go through while in a relationship, and you're kind of seeing like it go full circle in a way. And I really, really like the ending of the show.
Yes.
Like, honestly, if we get nothing more from this, I'm okay with that ending.
Really? I mean, it was kind of it was definitely a cliffhanger ending.
Yes, but also if they say, "Hey, we're only doing this," I'm okay. I'm good. Because I think the point was made, like through this relationship process. I think they kind of drove home, like again, bringing it full circle of what the cycle of this could be within a relationship, and by the end of it, it's just like, yeah, that's how it ends, and it does leave it open ended a little bit, but I'm okay with that. I had a lot of fun with that the way that they ended it, because at the end of it, I was like, oh shit, that's it. There's no more. And then they had that sting at the end too, like shortly right after the credits, and like, oh, okay, here's some answers. Like, oh no, there's no answers. Okay, all right, then that's what we got.
There's no official word of a season 2 yet.
Okay. I did also like about this show that like the celebrity of the week angle of it all. Like that was also fun, because then you had one with Sarah Paulson, Ron Perlman makes an appearance.
I love the Ron Perlman episode. I think that one's really funny.
Yes. Yeah, honestly, I think it was from there, because that was, yeah. So like, 5, 6, 7, and 8 were the strongest episodes for me. I think with the Ron Perlman episode was the one where I feel like it really got its stride. Like that's when I started really enjoying the show. It was 6 when I got the intent of the show. And then for me, just 7 and 8 was just, good stuff there. But I mean, Donald Glover as a creator is just, this made me want to go watch Atlanta, because I haven't watched it yet.
Atlanta's great. Oh, you watched Swarm already though, right? Yeah, you did. Yeah, Swarm
I did watch Swarm, yeah.
And wasn't this one also directed by his like pretty long-term creative partner?
Hiro
also
Murai. I think it's
Hiro Murai.
Yes. I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great. Who also directed a lot of Atlanta.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. He Hiro Murai. Yeah. He directed 18 episodes of The Bear, which feels like it's all of them.
That's a lot of The Bear.
That is a lot of
Bear. That's a lot of Bear.
Were there only 8 episodes in The Bear, or for the season 1?
It's very.
Did he direct every episode?
He's one of those creators.
Hold on, the first season. Yeah. Oh wow! I did not know that he directed every episode of The Bear.
Oh wow!
Like he's the only director for The Bear.
That makes a lot of sense based on just how focused that show feels, in that like it feels like it is very much a singular creative vision, which is good.
Oh wait, hold on. Nope, I was wrong. He was an executive producer on The Bear.
Okay.
Executive producer on The Bear. My bad. Not a sole director. I was like, this seems really odd that he would be the sole director in all of them. But The Bear, and then he did executive producer, and co-producer of Atlanta, as well as Station 11. Didn't you watch Station 11?
Station 11. What is that? A show?
It was on Max. It was on HBO Max. It came out in 2021. I feel like I think I remember you said you watched that show.
I watch a lot of shit, so I don't know.
That's fair.
And especially from years ago, that's already been filed away. You're asking me to dig back in like backstock, blow the dust off that file.
It's like, I don't know. Just give me a second here.
I think I started it, but I never finished it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at what he's directed. It was 26 episodes of Atlanta that he's directed. And then 2 episodes of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which was the first 2 episodes that he directed. But he's serving as an executive producer on a whole bunch of other stuff as well. But yeah, no, I like this show a lot. And Mom, if you're listening, you're wrong. It doesn't suck. There was a whole thing last week or 2 weeks ago where I just get a random text from my mom saying like, Mr. and Mrs. Smith sucks. I don't know who recommended this show to you, but it's not good. It's a random text from my mom, and I was like, I don't know. Ernesto said it was good, and then I watched it, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. This is a good show. But yeah, we'll have a talk later, me and Mom, because I haven't called her in a while. So I'm gonna give her. We'll have a talk about this. Like, Mom, what are you doing? Did you even
call your mom? Tell her she's wrong.
Hey, Mom, I just wanted to let you know that you're wrong.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm sure that conversation will go very well for you.
Very well. Yeah, no, I'm expecting big success with that conversation. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Again, it makes me want to go watch Atlanta. And it's also just clear that like Donald Glover has a vision and his team has visions when he makes these shows, and it also balances comedy pretty well within it as well. Like some random stuff that happens in there, and there's one where again that episode where they meet the other agents, and like even toward the end of that episode where they were like cutting to certain parts and then like it just cuts to them back in that scene like at the end. That was also just really funny, and also just letting a few moments breathe as well.
Yes, exactly.
Really good show. I think you're gonna enjoy the second half of that, Chandler.
Nice.
All right, but there you go. That's all we've been watching. So now we're gonna get into it. We're gonna be diving into our spoiler review of Dune Part 2. Chandler, give us a scream. Go ahead.
That was beautiful. Hans Zimmer should hire you.
Thank you so much.
Chandler, you're our guest. We'll start with you. What were your thoughts on Dune Part 2?
Wow. I'll say that right off the top. Just wow. That was amazing. Really, really, really good sci-fi. I thought it was really interesting how they took almost a more like human approach to this one, at least in the first half. Because I'll say part 1 is very cold feeling. Like it's very much about the politics, and it's very there's not a lot of like fun character interactions aside from a couple of things between like Paul and Duncan, or like I think he gives the Fear Hawat an awkward little hug at one point, but it's not a very warm movie despite being out in the desert. But this one, I was really impressed with the way that they balanced the tone, especially like in the first half with as they are like, as Paul and Jessica are integrating into the Fremen community, and there's just so many scenes of them just like hanging out and like joking around, and they gave Stilgar just this nice like silly old man kind of quality. Well, like he's still he's still himself, he's still very proud and like devout, but like he also just has this like wacky old guy energy that's like very fun in a way that I was not expecting, because that is not a part of any previous iteration of this of Dune at all. But I think it worked really, really well for this. But yeah, I thought it was really, really incredible.
Ernesto?
Chandler, hold on, a question for you. Did you get a chance to rewatch the original one? I guess, Matt, for both of you, and Chandler, we'll go to you first. Did you get a chance to rewatch the original one?
I did. So I watched part 2 yesterday, like in the afternoon yesterday. And yesterday morning I rewatched the first movie, and I also kind of lightly read through the second half of the book again. Oh, nice. I kind of like skimmed through just to kind of, remind myself of all the 6 million different plot lines that are happening in the second half of that book. So yeah, I brushed up on the book, and I also rewatched the first movie.
Matthew?
I did. I feel like, again, there were some. One of my biggest issues, especially with deep sci-fi, is that there's so much things going on, and we talked about that with Lord of the Rings already, and I had issues with that with Game of Thrones. Like these fantasy deep sci-fi stories is just like, it's so dense. There's so much going on. You have all these players in the mix, and I just get lost in the shuffle more often than not. And I feel like, especially with Dune, it does require multiple viewings, at least 2, just to get the baseline going. And so after watching it a second time, and now granted, the only other time I had watched it was in the theater back, a couple years ago. So I know this rewatch was definitely mandatory for me, because I was like, I'm not gonna remember shit if I just go in here cold. So I rewatched the first movie, and I think a lot of it just became clearer then. Also, I just remember in the theater nodding off from when I watched the first movie. So
blasphemy.
Blasphemy. So I think now going in here with a much better headspace and just being prepared to like sit down and watch this. And there were some moments where like I went back after they said a line to just hear that line again. So it's like, okay, who's this again? Like, especially all the exposition in the beginning of the movie, where I was like, okay, all right, let's put on your big boy hat, Matt. All right, they got this going on, you got that going on. We got these people over here. These people are bald. We're gonna call them baldies for right now. And just is like, okay, all right. So then like the Emperor, he's like the Sith kind of. I know this is kind of also. This would inspired Star Wars, but also Star Wars for me was first. So it's kind of like I'm taking from Star Wars and putting to this, but I know it meant the other way around. But this is where we are at this point. And I was like, all right, so he's like the Emperor, and then he's the Sith, and like that's kind of like Darth Vader because he's black and he's bald. And then like, or he's wearing all black, I should say.
Hold on, who do you think is Darth Vader? Who do you think is Darth Vader?
I guess the Baron would be. Okay, kind of that's Darth Vader.
Interesting. I have a different. I have a different take on
that. I don't think that anymore. on the first movie, he was kind of like Darth Vader, or maybe Batista was like Darth Vader. I don't know. Either way, long story short, there was I was able to understand the movie a lot more going into it. Also, I think it helps that because I watched this movie 2 days before I watched Dune Part 2, so like I knew literally in 2 days. What I retained will be remembered for the next movie going in immediately afterward. And I think that's also my part of the problem that I had with the first movie is that like I was having a difficult time understanding some of the elements. And then I was told that I had to wait 2+ years to like continue that story. So knowing that there was something that was immediately afterward that I can watch was helpful for me to be like, okay, we're just continuing the story. And what I did like about the second part was that we literally picked up right where we left off, which I was worried about. I wasn't sure if we were gonna like skip a few years and he was already acclimated into the Fremen, but no, we saw that full process kind of displayed throughout the second part of this movie, which I very much appreciated because I'd expect that like, yeah, no, he's good now. He's part of them. We're just gonna skip that part. But no, we didn't. Before we continue with this, I completely blew over like half the things I wanted to say before we even started diving into the review. So we're backtrack a little bit. Chandler, where did your love for Dune come from? And you have so many copies of that, and you're so enthralled in the story. Where did that come from?
So when the first movie was coming out in 2021. Like when it was kind of like announced, it just looked really cool. And so I was like, at a bookstore with a friend, and they had, you know, 1 million copies of it on the shelf because like they were marketing for the movie. And I was like, all right, well, I'll pick this up. And I read through it once, and I was like, okay, I like this, but it was incredibly dense. Because I mean, you were talking about having trouble keeping up with a lot of the plot lines in this version. Like, what if I told you that was less than half of the actual story? Like,
my head would explode.
I mean, there is so much that is cut from the original story in order to make this even somewhat sensible as like a viewing experience, which like it's all stuff that I love from the book. I think is really good, but I think the choices they made in terms of cutting a lot of stuff makes a lot of sense for this. But anyway, sorry. So I read through the book and I was like, I like this. It is very confusing. But you know, I'm going to like give it another shot. And like, then I saw the movie and I just was blown away. I loved that first movie, and like, especially just the viewing experience of sitting in a theater and just like being absorbed in it. Like, especially from like a sound design perspective, like the movie, the way the first one sounded to me was like nothing I had ever experienced before. And then, you know, also just like being so absorbed in the story and whatever. And then I went home and then like that day started reading the first book again. And then ordered the box set right here of the original 6 Frank Herbert books. And then just actually like a few months ago, like a month or two ago, I just finished the last one. And then I also just recently picked up these more sort of like artsy covers of the first 3, just because they look really nice.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so I read the first one, got interested, watched the movie, was enamored, and then really just dove into the story and just got absorbed into it for the past 3 years or so.
Which
Wow,
has been,
this is pretty recent.
Which has been your favorite book?
It's hard not to say the first one, because the first one is, it is the beginning. It is considered, the sci-fi book, like it's a classic. But barring that one, I would say probably the 4th one, God Emperor of Dune. Really like that one a lot. Are we doing spoilers for the book? Is that okay?
I mean, it's fine for me.
Fine for me.
Yeah. It's I mean, it was written in like the 60s. It's probably fine. Paul has a son that turns into a sandworm. And that's really cool.
Okay.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah,
it's a bucket or what?
Okay. Yeah, right.
Is it from like his overexposure to the spice in that, like the water of life, whatever?
No. So basically, there's the sandworms, and then in part 2, you see the baby sandworms. Before they become baby sandworms, they're these things called sand trout, which are like little, like almost like parasitic little fish organisms that swim in the sand. And they're all fleshy, and basically he grafts them to his skin until they become like a suit of armor. And then as they go through their natural life cycle, they are fusing with him during that time and literally turn him into a sandworm.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Paul Atreides is turned into a sandworm, or
no? His son is.
His son uses him as like a suit of armor, and then it's
a suit of armor to eventually turn himself into a sandworm. So is this the origins of sandworms then? Are all these?
No,
No. Okay.
no. This is just a crazy thing a silly guy did. Yeah.
Is that it? And that's in book. That's in book 4, 5.
It happens at the end of the 3rd book, but it's you see where that goes in the 4th book, basically.
Is he still human at that point? Like, does he just transform into that? Is he just like now among the sandworms?
That's a huge sticking point of the story, is him processing, like, am I still human? Like, what does this mean for me and all of humanity? It's like got it. We don't need to get that deep into the weeds, you know.
We still got to talk about the movie.
He's like, let's stick with the movie first, all right?
Let's scale way back. Yeah. We need to scale back literally 4,000 years before we get there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good, interesting glimpse of the future. Dennis, you have some work cut out for you. But if you go that far. But yeah, let's go back. Let's talk about the movie. Ernesto, your thoughts on the movie?
Okay, so where I was originally going with that, where my comment is that I not only right as I was going to watch the second one, I was in the parking lot finishing the first one. Like, I finished the movie, got out the car, and went and watched the second one. I ended up watching the first one. I watched it 2 times because I watched it once before the movie, then I watched the movie, and then I was hyping it up to my wife. So then we rewatched the first one, and then eventually in the near future I'm gonna go rewatch the second one for the first time. So overall, I loved the second movie, but there's some interesting things about the first movie that kind of, I think, relate to that are like call outs to either the second or third movie. So the main thing is, like, when he has the visions after they help save that group, when the little floaty thing was going to carry them away, how it broke and they had to go save them, and he gets all that spice into him, and he starts having those visions. And after Paul Atreides dies, they're in the tent, and he actually has visions of the Holy War that they're talking about at the end of the second movie. So I thought that was interesting because he was already like actualizing his powers, and he even at that point he uses the voice on his mom and like tells her, you know, like blaming her, almost like self-actualizing how he become, like seeing the person that he becomes at the end of the second movie. So I just thought that was such an interesting call out, because the first time I watched it, it didn't click. I was like, why is he in that like really dope armor where his face opened up, and then like you don't even see that for forever. But then at the end of the second movie, he when he claims that he's gonna blow up all the spice production, like this is what is gonna trigger this I'm assuming this massive war that happens in Messiah. So I thought that was I was like, man, that was so great that I was able to catch that in that one. And I thought another key point. So one of the highlights of the movie is when he tells the Bene Gesserit to silence during the finale, like when he just screams in her face and he shuts her up. And it's an interesting callback to the first one, because she tells him to silence when she's doing that hand thing, when he puts his hand in the box and she's got the needle to his neck to test him. Mm-hmm. That's the same. That's what she tells him. So it's almost like, you know, a nice little callback connection between the first two movies. So the first movie's incredible. I mean, we watched the whole first movie last night, and my wife's like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch most of it. Like, I'm pretty tired." We watched the whole thing. She goes, that movie flew by. She goes, I could have watched more. That's how good it was. Like that runtime flew by, and I felt I have the exact same sentiment regarding this movie as well. I mean, you got outstanding performances. This is probably Timothée Chalamet's strongest performance I've ever seen him in. Like, bar none, hands down. Another one I want to bring up is freaking the transformation of Austin Butler to become the villain. Yeah. It was so well done, and just like, that's not Elvis. Like, what happened, Elvis?
There's a little bit of Elvis in there.
I mean, just the brutality he was able to show. I mean, perfect scene is when they bring him the knives, and he's like, And he literally grabs it, slices the other girl's neck, walks up to the other girl, and just starts fucking stabbing her, and just puts it down and goes, it's not sharp enough. It's like that. Yeah. That's how you test your knives. Right. Like just.
There's not any other way you could do that.
I feel like there are better ways to test your equipment. But I just think his performance was absolutely phenomenal, and like I would love to see some sort of Oscar nomination for him, for Timothée Chalamet. I mean, just absolutely standout performances. I think we're going to be talking about this movie for the Oscars next year.
Yeah.
I liked how the second movie like really focuses on Paul, like fighting against his destiny to become the leader. And like he's fighting against this thing for wanting to go south. But then what's interesting is that once he gets there and he has that speech, it's like that's him, like he became that person. And this is where I think I think Paul Atreides more relates to the Darth Vader character, because he's like becoming like this strong and powerful force. So I thought it was interesting that you brought up Darth Vader, and to me, I see him as Darth Vader, whereas like the first half of this book is like Anakin episode 1. And then this is kind of like, and then this movie is kind of like episode 2 and 3 put together.
So, okay. It didn't take me to the very end of this movie because I don't know anything about Dune. I'm kind of watching just based on the movies. And it wasn't until the end I was like, wait a minute. Is he turned evil? Like I knew nothing. I had no idea that was the story that we could potentially go in. I still don't know if he's going to be bad. By the end of
Chandler
this.
Knows.
Yeah, Chandler knows. Chandler knows. I was looking at that. I was like, wait. To your point, it's like he's Anakin. He's the chosen one, and then he turns evil. Maybe I don't know. But because toward the end of the movie, there is a shift happening, and a shift that I wasn't expecting because of how I just thought he was our hero. It's like, this seems like a classic hero's journey. He's given this responsibility. He says no, and then he trains, and then he's just put upon him because he has no other choice. And then boom, he is our hero. And then at the end of it, it still felt like a cliffhanger. It's like, there's still more to come. And I was like, really? I thought we were done. But I guess not. We're still going. I knew there were more books, but I thought this was a 1-2 situation. Until Chandler told me a few weeks ago, I was like, no, there's like this is a 1-2 for the first book. Then the second movie is going to be the third book. And I was like, okay. So like, there's a lot more to this than I really don't realize that we're heading toward in this story. And the fact that like, I don't know. I just felt like he was our main hero, and then when you throw in Austin Butler, and he was like, here is the version of the chosen one that's going in a dark path, and then here is Paul Atreides, the version of our chosen one that's going to be in a good path. And then by the time the movie's over, I was like, or not. I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot there.
Yeah, and I will say, I just said like I do know what happens. Actually, I want to correct myself. I don't know what's going to happen in the third movie, because they took some liberties with this one and made some choices that could change some things.
Okay.
Not super drastically. Like a lot of the main beats are still there from the books, but they definitely, especially with Chani's character, as compared to the book. I will say this version of Chani is a different person than she is in the book, in a very good way.
Okay.
I think personally. Okay. Yeah. So like in the book, she is strong and a warrior as far as any Fremen woman is. Like she's not like leading battalions or like standing up for any kind of cause necessarily. Again, not any more so than any of them are. I would say in the book she serves a lot more as mostly just a romantic interest for Paul. She's a lot more willing to go along with this like Messiah mythos around Paul, and kind of buys into it and is very just kind of along for the ride, I would say, in the book. I really like what they did with her character in this one, where she is this voice of kind of standing up against this idea that they need someone to come save them. She voices she is a voice of the Fremen, saying that like we as Fremen need to like fight for ourselves. Like we need to be our own saviors. We don't need the Lisan Al Gaib, like the voice from the outer world. We can save ourselves. And I think that was like a really, really interesting addition, and a really good subplot to have in like this version of the story that honestly just doesn't exist in the book. Like the Fremen aren't nearly as split in the book. They're pretty well unified in the book. Whereas in here they've taken that liberty to kind of have people who are not buying into the Messiah thing.
I feel like by the end of the movie, though, I feel like she's the only one that's not buying into it. So this is the part that I was a little bit confused about toward the end of the movie, was like, where was the point that she was, or I guess the reason, what was the main reason why she was upset with Paul Atreides? Like, I think when he was like giving his speech and like he was like, Javier Bardem wanted to fight him, and he was like, no, and all these people were kind of bowing down to him. And this was like shortly after he just drank what they call like the sandworm pee or something.
The water of life.
The water of life, yeah. Oh. And so shortly after he drank that, he's able to see clearly now. And so I was around there where I know that there was a shift in like their relationship, but I just didn't quite understand why she was fully just like against him at that point.
So basically, Paul has ingratiated himself into this society by saying, I am not this Messiah. Like, I am not your religious figurehead. I am not like, I want to be Fremen, and I want to fight with the Fremen, and I want to just be on your side and help in any way that I can. If you're going on a suicide mission, then I'll die too. Like, he's ingratiated into this society by just being one with them, and especially ingratiating himself with Chani by saying that, because it's made very clear in this movie that she does not need or want any kind of like outworlder savior. And him saying like, I'm not doing all of that, like, that appeals to her. As soon as he takes that step to drink the water of life, which is something that like they say multiple times throughout the movie, that would kill a normal man.
Right.
Men cannot drink the water of life. They will die. Except in the prophecy, it says there's a man who will drink the water of life and survive and be a Messiah. So him taking that step is him accepting that position as a Messiah. And that's where she turns on him. And that's where she says, you are not who I thought you were. You know, you've betrayed me by accepting this sort of like Messiah title and responsibility.
And what was the influence for him to drink the water of life? That part was also fuzzy for me as well. I know that there are other influences. I know that Rebecca Ferguson, Jessica was influencing a lot to the people of the Fremen. Like that was like her whole mission. And then she had these really weird conversations with her baby. But what was the push for him to drink it? Because I feel like that we were on our way to the north, and then as soon as he got there, he just immediately drank it. Like there wasn't any pop. Like there was a little bit of. Sorry, say it again.
To the south, sorry.
So yes, sorry. He went to the south, and then as soon as he got there, he's like, "I'm gonna drink that water," and I was like, I feel like there was I feel like I missed a step. It's like I didn't even see you arrive. You just went straight there. So like, where was the main influence for him just to go and drink? I know he was having visions, but
right. Well, so this is another point where they twisted some stuff a little bit for the purpose of the movie. In the book, the Lady Jessica is she is Bene Gesserit, and she does want the Fremen to believe in Paul as a Messiah, because mostly for survival. I think kind of Jessica's main motivation in like the first and second books is that she wants to survive and she wants to get back to Caladan, their home world. But she's not as proactive in making this community like believe in them, mostly because they kind of accept it at face value in the book anyway. Like I said, there's not that much friction among the Fremen about like, is this actually him? Like, that plot was expanded a lot for the movie. But it works really well because it gives Paul a way to externalize that conflict. A lot of people say that like Dune is like unfilmable or whatever because so much of the conflict is internal. There is a lot of Paul kind of like going through the motions of kind of like working his way up in the Fremen society and stepping into this Messiah role. But internally, he's saying like, oh, I need to do whatever I can to prevent the Holy War. And like, I need to pull back and I need to do this. And turning Jessica into this more proactive, like pretty sinister kind of character in this movie was a really great, smart way to like externalize that conflict, because it gives Paul someone to yell at, you know, like as opposed to him just thinking all the time about what he should and shouldn't do and whatever. It gives him an external force to kind of like bump up against, with an absolutely killer performance by Rebecca Ferguson, by the way, like genuinely terrifying. And
there were some moments in there where like it was quick too. Like she was having a conversation with somebody, and then just like out of nowhere she go, "Stop talking," like shut up. Like nope. Like you knew exactly what she was doing. She was like, you as the audience were realizing that she was hearing voices that we did not hear, and then she was like, "Stop talking." Like nope, and like you can. It was really good and like very subtle how she did those. That performance.
Yeah, really incredible. But anyway, basically, to answer your question about like why does he drink the water of life? In the movie, it feels a little bit more like Jessica is pushing him to this point and paving the way for him to do that. But the kind of tipping point is more or less the same in the book and the movie, in just that like the Harkonnens are back after, you know, the Atreides took over Dune, and then the Harkonnens came in under the cover of night and decimated them, and they are back in control. And Paul has been working with the Fremen, destroying all of their spice harvesters and like trying to pull the rug out from under them. In the book, it's over the course of 2 years. In the movie, it seems like it's over the course of about 6 months. They've been fighting back against the Harkonnens over these months or whatever, and now they need to make a final blow. And Paul doesn't feel like they can do it without taking that last step and drinking the water of life so that he can improve his like prescient visions and like be able to now, after he's drank it, like literally see the future.
Right.
Whereas previously it was more like impressions and dreams and like these vague sort of feelings, where now he's drank the water of life. He can see the future now. And so it was one of those things where he needed to do that in order to like fully realize his abilities and his power so that he can do what he can to take control of Arrakis, and then by way of that, take control of the known universe by becoming the new emperor. And he's hoping that means he can prevent the Holy War, because that's his main goal throughout both of these movies and throughout, that first book and whatever it is. He's trying so desperately to prevent what in the book is called the Jihad, but in the movie they've changed it to the Holy War. He's trying so hard to prevent this, and it's like it's almost like he's fighting against fate, because this is going to happen. And he's rallying against it, and he's trying so hard, and it's almost like no matter what he does, this war is coming. Because it's like if he dies, then I think Florence Pugh's character, Princess Irulan, she says like prophets get stronger when they die. So if he dies, he's a martyr, and they go on the Holy War to like avenge him. If he rises to power, they go on the Holy War in his name to like spread his influence. Like it's like no matter what he does, this thing is coming. So he's just trying to lean into it and take control as much as he can to try to like tamper it.
And I think you're kind of going on this tangent a little bit. I think I asked and then we went on somewhere else. But Zendaya's character, Chani, she was the only person that's kind of against him by the end of this movie. Is that as part of the Fremen? Is that correct, or did she have like people with her as well?
In the movie or the book?
I guess the movie. Like because she walked away for many reasons toward the end of that movie, but it felt like the entire Fremen community was basically on the side of like he's the Messiah, and she's like, nope, not buying that, and then kind of just walked off.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my perception of the movie is that she is very much alone. Like she walked out into the desert by herself, and she doesn't seem to have anybody. The only person that we see her being like really friendly with, dies in the movie.
Oh yeah.
And so like it seems like Chani is very much by herself, which again in the book is not a conflict at all.
Right.
At the end of the first book, he does marry Princess Irulan, but it's very much like he's basically telling everyone, all right, I'm going to marry Princess Irulan. Chani, don't worry. I love you. Like, you and me are good. I won't even look at her. I won't touch her. This is a contract. I'm not marrying her. I'm signing a contract so I can become emperor. Like, I love you. We are good. Everything is fine. Which is why I was actually surprised watching this movie, walking in thinking like, okay, I pretty much know how this goes. And then when Chani leaves at the end, I was like, whoa. That's why I think it has some implications for whatever they do with the third one, whether they directly adapt the third book or if they just do something entirely different. I'm sorry, the second book.
Book, yeah.
I'm really curious what happens now.
How'd you feel like the whole Harkonnen story was kind of taken here? Because in my opinion, I felt like we didn't spend a whole bunch of time with them. And if I was going to gripe anything about this movie, I really do like this movie. I really like it. But there's a few things in here that I was like, I don't know. And it wasn't because I was confused. I think I was able to keep up with this more because a lot of this movie felt very familiar to me. I was like, oh, here's Apollo Atreides. He's in this new town. This is Avatar. All right. He's trying to get with the natives. All right.
Oh, okay.
Instead of the banshees, it's a sandworm. Got it. We're moving along here. The Harkonnen, they're the humans who want to take over this land, but they already kind of have it. But that's okay because I'm following along. I feel like that when it came to the Harkonnen stuff, it was just like the Baron just being like, "You suck, Batista. I'm gonna get my nephew to, or is his nephew?
Yes.
I'm gonna get Austin Butler to do your job because you suck." And then we just see Dave Bautista try and fail, and then he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna bring in this other guy, and then we're gonna put him in an arena," which was really cool to kind of test his abilities. And then he's like, "All right, then congratulations, you won." And then he told Batista to go kiss his foot, and then he's been leading, and then he dies. And as much as I thought all the Harkonnen stuff was cool, I felt it was very anticlimactic for me to like, we're finally starting this battle, and we just see the Baron just literally fallen before Paul Atreides even gets here. And I feel like in a way we were building them up to be these like, oh, I can't wait to see this epic battle, and it wasn't really about that at all. And so, like, for me, it was kind of like a little bit of a letdown that we didn't really get that final showdown, with the exception of Austin Butler, who plays, I don't know,
Fade Rotha.
Fade Rotha. Between him and Paul Atreides, like, that was a good interaction that they had, but also it was more just hand-on-hand combat, less epic than I was assuming that was going to play out.
See, I had almost the opposite.
Same.
I mean, I thought like the assault on the Harkonnens with all the sandworms and
that was epic.
Insanity.
Yes.
And then I felt like the personal one-on-one hand-to-hand combat with no music.
Yeah, true.
And just very tense and personal and in your face. I thought that was really, really cool. Especially because and especially in this version, they're very much building up Fade Rotha to be the other side of the coin of Paul Atreides. He is very directly mirroring Paul, in that, like, he is also a potential Kwisatz Haderach, because they've tested him and they are, like, preserving the bloodline and stuff like that. And I thought it was a nice, I don't know, I thought it was just really good building up to that just tense one-on-one battle, where he is kind of fighting against himself in that moment.
Sure. And like, I also felt that too. Like, I feel like the fight itself was really good. Like, I enjoyed that aspect of it, but I feel like the stuff leading, like, for example, when the Baron, like, he was this big force, he was going up against Oscar Isaac in the first movie, and he's like this force to be reckoned with for the most part. But he's really just, bathing in his goop all day. And then by the time we get there, like, they kind of cut off his equipment. Kind of, again, very similar to Darth Vader. Like, once without the suit, he's just a simple old man. And then, Paul Atreides comes up and says, "Die, Grandpapa," and then he's dead. And then that's the whole thing with, like, oh, he's your grandfather too. Okay, so that's I was not expecting that aspect of it, but I also felt like it didn't really go anywhere, at least for now, anyway.
Well, you get that callback in the first movie where he's gonna kill him and he's eating his food, and he goes, "You have a nice spread here, cousin." Like, he calls him cousin in the first movie before he kills him.
Yeah, I did catch that. I just didn't understand it. I was like, why do you call him cousin? That's like a weird thing to say.
Unless they are actually cousins, Matthew.
Yeah, unless they are actually cousins. Yeah, exactly.
And I will say, I don't know how Oscar Isaac's character Leto, I don't know how he knows that in this movie.
Right.
That's an odd thing, because, like, Jessica says she doesn't even know it until she drinks the water of life. That's one thing that I'm not so sure how or why that happens. Yeah, that was an odd thing. But sorry, I forget, where were you?
So I was. It was a part where, like, Paul Atreides comes up and just kind of just stabs the Harkonnen. Baron. And like, everyone was just standing around. Like, I was expecting more of a pushback from them, but I guess as I'm thinking about it, I guess they were more protecting the Emperor, not the Baron in that moment,
Right.
and they're just kind of seeing how this plays out. And then he's like, then Paul Atreides like, hey, I see you, but I came here to kill him because he killed my father, and then I'm gonna go out, but you're gonna be my prisoner now, and here's my people coming in and grabbing you, type of deal.
Yeah. So, what if I told you that in the book, the Baron is killed by a 2-year-old girl?
What?
I would like that less.
So, like, here, I'll back up a little bit, but my perspective on this is that the Harkonnens are basically pawns. They are just pieces in the game. The story isn't even being propelled by like the people on Arrakis.
No,
it's the Bene Gesserit and like the Empire, basically just sliding stuff around, seeing what works for them, just kind of like experimenting and playing and see like just trying to see what they can make happen, because the Bene Gesserit has this ultimate goal of like elevating humanity to like new levels. That is the reason for their genetic breeding program. That's why they are like preserving bloodlines and seducing different members of this society. Like, they are playing a like millennia spanning chess game of just cataloging everything and moving pieces around. And it's like the Reverend Mother at one point in this movie says like, we're Bene Gesserit, we don't hope, we plan.
Right.
They are planners for the entire human race. And so I see the Harkonnens as just another piece on the board. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it is exciting seeing the Fremen up against the Harkonnens and like that big final conflict, and seeing Paul kill Feyd-Rautha and whatever. Like, yes, but it's also not the point. The point is that like internal conflict that Paul has, where, like I said, I think that last confrontation with him and Feyd-Rautha is really cool, because it feels very much like he is fighting a version of himself, because he kind of is, both literally in the sense that he mirrors him so much, but also kind of more like high concept in that he is fighting against like what he could be and what he wants to be and what he doesn't want to be. Like, he is literally fighting himself in that moment. And I think that's really great. But it is true though that in the book, the Baron does get murdered by a 2-year-old girl.
Is the 2-year-old girl happen to be his sister?
Yes.
Okay. That's I figured.
Yeah. So that's another liberty that they took with this movie, where, like I said, the whole process of Paul living with the Fremen and stepping up into this Messiah role and whatever, that spans about 2 years in the book, and there's a time skip where we see Paul and Jessica come into Sietch Tabra, and they have the funeral with Jameis, and they kind of get acquainted, and he gets his names and stuff like that. And then next chapter is 2 years later, and Alia has been born, his sister. He also in the book has a son with Chani.
Oh wow!
After those 2 years. Basically Alia being what you would call preborn, because she's gone through the water of life ceremony, and is basically, she is born a Reverend Mother. So she has memories of hundreds, if not thousands of years worth of ancestors, and basically can speak as like a fully grown woman by the age of 2. And like they say that she knows things she shouldn't know, and she like makes everyone in the siege really uncomfortable because she's walking around talking and joking like a grown woman.
That's pretty funny.
And yeah, it's like it's very unsettling and creepy. And I think they made a good choice not doing that in the movie. I would have loved to have seen it. Yeah. But I think a general audience may have been turned off by that.
But also they kind of played along with that idea of just like having that character in the movie by staying in the womb rather than being like a 2-year-old walking around. And
right. Yeah. They give some of that to, like, it is still Alia, but they give some of that like social weirdness to Jessica.
Yeah.
As a vehicle for Alia, which I think was, again, just like a really good way to kind of get around that for a film adaptation, because like it never looks great having like a very, very young child actor and then trying to do the whole like, oh, but she's actually super intelligent, and like that's really, really hard to actually film. So I think they did a great job. Like,
that's a good point.
Kind of adapting that.
Let's briefly talk about just all the production value that kind of went into this movie. And I think at the very beginning, I kind of loved how, like, I think as rightfully so, a lot of things I did really like about the movie, aside from, you know, the story, was just the technical aspects, the creative liberties they took in certain scenes. I think I loved how the movie started, where like they're kind of just being invaded, and like as they're in their pursuit to go to the main Fremen location in the north, and they have like these like hunters, and again kind of playing with sound, and the music is doing really well with it, and they're just kind of going up and they're just floating up into the sky, and it's really weird.
Dude. Oh, it's so good.
And then the part that really gets you, and where my seat was kind of rumbling a little bit, was like when they dropped, and it was just boom, 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 and it's just silence, and you don't hear any of that, and then you just hear this big thud that just drops down. It was, to me, I was like, oh, we're doing this at the very beginning. We're just starting this movie right off. I think, to your point, and I think one of you said it earlier on, is like this movie feels very different from the first movie, where he took a lot more liberties with the story of kind of like making it more human, making it more relatable. And also, like, even at the very end of the first movie, he's like, oh, it's only just the beginning. After watching the second movie, this definitely feels like it is like all of the first movie was like a prologue to this.
Yes.
Like it. And then Ernesto, I believe you said that Denis Villeneuve said that you don't really need to watch the first movie to get the context of the second one.
That was something specifically that he's been saying on the press tour, is that this movie is designed to be self-contained. Like, you can watch part 2 without watching part 1. And I mean, obviously I watched part 1, but I went into it seeing if like if I didn't watch part 1, would I still get it? And I would actually agree. And I think that is, in a world of franchises in part 1 and part 2, for him to achieve that on this scale with such a dense story, really just like plays to how much of an amazing director. Like, he really is one of the GOATs. Like, everything. I love Arrival is like really holds a very special place in my heart. That movie is incredible. And just everything he was able to do with this one, like the deliberate, like you were just saying, with the bodies hitting the ground, just the deliberate use of sound, that whole fight scene not having any music behind it. I mean, Chandler, your wonderful intro, right when we first started talking about it, of like the throat singing thing that they're doing, like it's like it was just it was incredible. That whole scene, that action sequence with Johnny and Paul, where they're fighting the Harkonnen on the Thopters, and they're hiding behind the legs. Like, what a beautiful sequence. And the way that Johnny takes him out at the end when they distracts him, like, you're looking through the scope of the enemy, and then the last thing he sees is Johnny's shooting him before he dies. Like, what a great setup, and a great use of her character. Chandler very what you were saying, of like just how they were able to use her character and make her this strong warrior and fighter. And I think that scene in particular is a definite standout for that. I mean, and just that whole action, all the action sequences were fantastic. Yeah. That final battle, like with the fact that there was no music and it's more of this calculated chess moves between these two equal rivals, and just how they approach it. And like and something that I caught when I watched the first Dune movie, in the beginning, he has that training session with how do you pronounce his name? Josh Brolin's
Gurney Halleck.
How he stabs him is almost the exact same spot, maybe the opposite side of how he stabs him in the first movie. I was like, he stabs him in the exact same spot. So he almost like was like just great foreshadowing for that very crucial moment in this Dune storyline. And I think with Johnny, with another, like, because her being in the room when he's giving his speech and he has the battle, it's like she isn't on board, but she's still there. I think it's the moment when he walks up to her and he tells her that I will love you until my last breath. And then literally the next thing he says is he's going to marry Princess Orlan. I think for her, that was like, I'm done. Like, that was her I'm done moment. Yeah. Like, you tell me you love me, but yet you're like forsaking your life to another who you're obviously going to be, you're going to have a child with her in some way or another. Like, that, at the very least, you're going to have to give her some sort of offspring. So you're going to be intimate with her. Like, so, I mean, that I can understand. Like, that was a hard pill for her to swallow. And I think that was a great moment for her character, really showcasing that she is a strong, self-reliant warrior, that she wasn't going to stand for that. She's like, I'm done. I'm going to go on my own. So it's interesting to see that that's such a vast difference between the book and the movie. I also feel that Jessica is kind of reminiscent to the Emperor, where she has all these things that the Bene Gesserit already set in place, and just the fact that she made her kid be a boy, like from that moment she almost decided, and teaching him the voice, like she decided that she was going to self-fulfill this prophecy. And like her doing all this in this second movie was like really her coming into that, like using those things that were already set in place, like pieces of the puzzle, and really pushing her narrative and all her propaganda to get to the level that I did. I mean, when Paul gets to the South and all those people are worshiping him, what a great scene that they set up, where he walks up the hill and you see this mass of people. Like, how do you help but not feel that way? Like, when you come in, like, well, damn, maybe I am the Messiah. Like,
but also, it's crazy that there are that many people there, and then you go to the scenes where the Baron, where he's talking to the Emperor, he's like, the South is uninhabitable. People don't survive out there. It's like, how can you be that naive the entire time? Of like, go ahead.
I think specifically the Harkonnens project like their projections of how many Fremen like exist on the planet. I think they're under the assumption that there's about 5,000 of them, right? But there's actually like 10 million or more.
Right. That's a huge
which they bring up with
because they're so well hidden, and they're so tactical, and they're so deeply ingrained in the environment of the planet. They just have no idea.
And they also bring up like just another connection that I just remembered between the first and the second one. I mean, he gives himself the name. His name is that Desert Mouse. And in the first movie, when he's reading in the room and he walks up before that hunter seeker comes to him, he's looking at the mouse when they're talking about the terrain of Arrakis. So he already like had an affinity for the desert mouse. So it was just another interesting.
You also see it outside of the tent when they get buried in the sand and they're in the tent. It's on top of the sand dune. It's very very cool.
Very cool callback. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, even going back to the to Jessica, like the very end of the movie, where what does she play? The
Reverend Mother.
Thank you. And she's talking to the other one, like through just through the mind, and she's like, you picked the wrong side, and she's like, there is no sides, and so like you can tell that, to your point, she was like the what were they called? What's the
Bene Gesserit.
Thank you. That whole community that's playing the chess, like Rebecca Ferguson was playing her own chess game, kind of fulfilling this version of how she wants this to play out, which I do find interesting, because then you can see it being played out in other, like with the other woman going over to Austin Butler and was like, hey. And then she's like, I tricked him. He's on our side. He's easily influenced, and I got a baby in me. So there's that. And so like, damn, you're working hard. You're working overtime on this one, aren't you? But
you're safe
like,
now.
Even like you're you're safe now. What I think what it was really nice too is like there was a good solid 20 minutes of us like kind of learning about Austin Butler and what's his name again? Sorry, the Fred
Rotha.
Thank you. I'm just gonna start just going to you. It's like character name. Thank you.
You mean like the whole Barron family and like seeing their our artificial world on Giddy Prime? Is it Giddy Prime? Or was that the name of their planet?
Yeah. Yep.
See, I told you, Matt. I'm in. I'm fucking in it now.
Like
good. Tomorrow morning on my way to work.
I need
Dune book 1 going on Audible.
I need a cheat sheet. But the like just the fact that they spent about a good solid 20 minutes of establishing his old big, like it was a while before we went back to Paul Atreides and the Fremen and all that, and we saw the arena fight, we saw him being as ruthless as he was to all of like the people that are around him, and then also eventually we get to the whole Dave Bautista of it all, but like I really like how they took the time with that to like at least let me see him in action, you know? Like I feel like a lot of the times, a lot of these movies where it's like 5-minute scenes is like bad. Now back to our heroes and their journey, and then it just quick snippets to like, here's our villain being menacing, doing bad stuff, and then back to our hero. And like this time we spent a decent amount of devoted to like, no, you get to see him in action and then see him kind of forming his plan, and then also just seeing how he was, whereas as soon as he took control, he's like, that's where our suspicion is, bomb it, like to really obliterate. Nope.
Obliterate.
Obliterate. Nope.
Got you. Obliterate.
Obliterate.
Thank you very much. The North, right? The North they got.
Oh, you mean when he comes with the ships and just blows
Siege
up?
Tower, yeah.
Yes, that one. Yeah, see, I'm getting there. I picked
but you know what's really cool about Giddy Prime? Do you like just the cinematography, just the stylistic choice to go in black and white? Like I thought that was incredible, and I thought like putting it in black and white really like highlights the amount of violence and just how brutal it is there.
Yes.
And you know what else? Like that was shot in infrared. How crazy is that?
Oh wow!
Oh really?
Yeah. That just to make like how you get the blacks of his eyes and showing that fully black sun, like the whole thing was shot. That whole thing was shot in infrared, and I just thought that was just so cool. Just really adding to the detail that Denis and the cinematographer's name escapes me. They put into their shot composition and everything. I just thought that was so cool.
Greg Fraser.
Thank you, yes, Greg Fraser.
Also just like. There are some shots of the moon, or I guess the sun, and they had some different shapes in it.
Oh, with the eclipses, the double eclipse, yeah.
Every time I saw that, it's like, ooh, Batman's close by. They're looking at Batman. they just keep throwing up the bat symbol, and he's like, no, he's not coming, guys. You got to do this one on your own.
Yeah.
I appreciate the effort, but it's not happening. Yeah. There's this immense amount of detail. I'm sure we're missing a few things there, and I think it even shows, if you can, Ernesto, quickly show the box office numbers there. Like a lot of people came in droves to go see this movie. I think it premiered at some festival at first, and it was boasted by like an enormous amount of positive reviews. I'm looking at IMDb right now. It's given a 9.0, which like even for IMDb standards, even like a good movie is like a solid 8. The fact that it's a 9, it just shows that it's like an excellent film, and you can see a lot of detail that went into it. I'm looking up Rotten Tomatoes right now. I'm pretty sure that is a 90%. So yeah, 93 critics, 95 audience. So we're kind of all on the same page here of how like well made this movie was. At the very least, even if you didn't keep up with the story, technical wise, like a lot of love and care into cinematography, sound design, the way that it looks, to your point. And then even now you look at the box office compared to where I think Dune Part 1 had a very unfair disadvantage because it was released during the pandemic. It was also at a time where it's like you can go to the theater or watch it at home, and that really affected its box office numbers here now. And I can understand the hesitation where they're like, I don't know if because like the numbers for the first movie didn't quite compare. Whereas this one has a lot of more legwork to do because like you really didn't have the first movie to go off of to see if people really want to watch this movie or not. And I think now you can see that it came in a big bad way, you know, $81 million domestically, another 95 internationally, with a total of $178.5 million, which is a crazy amount of money in its first weekend. The fact that it even hit more internationally, almost 100 million in the first weekend internationally, is pretty impressive.
Dominating more internationally than here domestically. I mean, these are crazy ass numbers.
And the fact that the budget was around $200 million and take about another $100 million for marketing, like, yeah, I mean, I think it's almost made its budget within the first weekend. Now, here the difficult part is it doesn't have the staying power, and I think for the most part it does, in my opinion. I think a lot of people are to go back and rewatch this movie in the theater. Yeah,
I will 100% be one of them.
The fact that this movie was kind of a demand to go watch it in premium formats, you know, your IMAX, your Dolby, your RPX, your 40X, your ScreenX, however you want to watch it. Like it was, so like I was given a free upgrade to go watch this movie in RPX, but if I wanted to watch it at the same time in a normal showing, I had plenty of room, but that RPX packed. Yeah. It's been a while since I've stayed in a packed house, and I said I was going to talk about my experience in the theater. I feel like that I got like a cheap version because RPX is no Dolby, to say the least, and I feel like my chair was just like there's a subwoofer right underneath it. So anything that was happening, it was just like my chair was moving, and I was like, I didn't pay for this experience. I just wanted some good sound in here. But the guy next to me, another funny part was that the bass was so loud that you just hear popcorn buckets just dropping out of the. I was like, did you hear?
Damn it!
It kept falling out of the because you had a little table that you have next to you. At least some of the seats have that, but mine did. And so the guy next to me, he kept putting his popcorn bucket on the little table, and it kept coming off. I was like, bro, just hold it.
Put it in your lap.
The soundtrack is basically a cello the size of a boat being played by a dull saw. You're gonna get some. There's gonna be a lot of bass in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the guy just like I was like, please stop putting it on the table. And then there's moments in this movie where I feel like he was a fan, don't get me wrong, but like it was distracting where all of a sudden like something would happen, he goes, yeah. I was like, oh, yeah. Like, what? I'm like, dude, calm down right now. Yeah. Right? It's like don't get me wrong, it's intense, but he was like when certain moment, like when he was like when Paul Atreides was like about to ride the sand dune, which that moment, that build up, that like
come on, it's amazing.
Was probably the best part of the movie for me. Was just like he's like placing it down. It cuts to Chani. She's like, no, go a little bit lower. Go a little bit lower. And then he goes down a little bit lower. And then he puts the sand thumper, whatever it's called, on the in the sand, and he goes, dude, and you see it, and it's like it's the biggest one we've ever seen. And then
he's like, whoa, not that big.
And then he's just like, don't show off. It's like the build up to that was so good. And you get like that great satisfying moment of him just riding that sandworm. And the dude next to me needed to calm down. Because he was just like, like you are alone right now, and amidst of other people. Like he wasn't with anybody. I need you to calm down.
Oh man, he was by himself.
He was by himself. It's like he had his popcorn. And the other thing that was very confusing to me, the guy next to me also did the same thing. Is that they had to get up and use the bathroom. That's fine, right? You know the chairs. Some chairs that have the recliner setting on it, right? Mm-hmm. What is the natural way you would get out of that chair?
Up.
Reset it,
right?
So you're not reclining. And then get up and walk away. But it sounds to me like there was a little bit of climbing involved.
It was like he decided consciously with a sea of popcorn underneath him because his popcorn fell from the base, and he's literally like reclined like this, and then he's like shimmying down to get out of his chair. And I was like, have you ever got out of a chair before? What are you doing right now?
He doesn't want to wind it up for you. He wants to not make noise.
How nice of him.
He's making more of a distraction right now, because then then his feet land and he's standing on the popcorn. And you're just and then he's like awkwardly getting up, and then once he gets up, he has to adjust himself because he was awkwardly getting there. Like, I don't know what you're doing, man. And then he kind of just jumps back in. He's just getting back because it was still reclined. I was like, I don't know. Maybe you've never seen a recliner before. Maybe you don't know how it works. But these are buttons there that you put, you reset it, you get off like a normal person. Mm-hmm. That was just my theater experience. I don't know, Ernesto, was your theater packed in this? I know you saw it in Dolby.
I saw it in Dolby. So I was it was maybe Thursday. I was like, oh, you know what? I should probably book my ticket now. Let's go see what the theaters look like. So then literally all the showings had maybe 1 or 2 seats. I mean, the Dolby theater, even broke neck, all seats were filled. I got a seat in the very last row on the balcony, the very, very top. It was the last one left. It was super packed. And I was looking at Altamont Springs and Disney Springs. All showings were completely booked.
Wow.
But yeah, there was a couple of people next to me. My theater got really hyped, especially when he told the Betty Gesserit, silence. Everybody's like, yeah, tell that bitch shut up. Everybody's come on, that was such a great moment. On top of so many other great moments, but it's another one. This movie's almost 3 hours long, and I didn't look at my watch one time to see what time it was. I was locked in from start to finish.
I was really surprised by the fact that I was watching a Dune movie, I would say pretty famously or infamously pretty miserable story.
Yeah.
It's not the most sort of cozy or fun story, traditionally speaking. I was so surprised to be sitting in that theater and hearing the whole room laughing at multiple points, which is what I was talking about, with the tone. I think they nailed the tone
absolutely
of this movie in a way that I was shocked by, because like I said, I was not expecting the sort of comedy aspects of it, where it felt very warm and almost even cozy at certain points, where they're just hanging out, and especially with Stilgar, just oh, of course he's gonna say he's not the Messiah.
That was a good moment.
There's a lot of nice I was so surprised to hear the entire theater laughing at certain points throughout the movie. And then I think they also nailed the tone of the ending in a way that I think was very difficult to do, but they pulled off super, super well with it. Even though he has defeated the enemy and he's victorious or whatever, they did a really good job of making that feel like a bad thing because it kind of is.
Because it didn't feel like it was a win at the end of the day.
Right.
They did. By the end of the movie, the goal was achieved. But then again, where I discovered it's oh no, we're not done yet. Typically in a Star Wars movie, they will have fireworks and the Ewoks are just dancing around. But this is not what happened. This is Revenge of the Sith, where it just felt like we're about to see the rise of this iconic villain that I don't know yet type of deal. Mm-hmm. And so for me now it's even more exciting because I really don't know where we're gonna go with this because I feel like I was misled. I was like, oh, he's our dude, he's the Messiah, he's gonna be our hero, and then he's like, oh no, he doesn't look happy. I don't think we're about to be set up for this grand redemption for him. It was again, it took me off guard. I wasn't expecting that type of turn for his character. It gets me really excited. But with that, before we wrap things up, there's one thing I do want to talk about, and it's the infamous popcorn bucket that AMC has bestowed onto us. And I just want to know your thoughts on that, Chandler. It's Do you think? Let me put it this way: do you think that the popcorn bucket was kind of an interesting way to also promote the movie as well? Because I feel like that kind of within the positive reviews and everyone's like the early positive scores and like good word of mouth. You also had these popcorn buckets, which AMC is definitely promoting with the first image right there. It's like Dune date night. It's like, come on. You know what you're doing right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted one so bad, and they were sold out. But yeah, I do think. I don't know how you come up with this design, get all the way through manufacturing, and don't kind of a little bit go,
this looks. Anybody think this is weird?
Yeah, I think somebody.
No, okay.
I think somebody knows what they're doing on that side of things, in the sense that like you can get a lot of like meme traffic and stuff like that travels really far.
Yes.
Like you can get a lot of mileage out of something being accidentally kind of silly. So, I mean, honestly, my thought is that maybe they designed this thing, and like once it came out of the factory, they went, "We're gonna have to roll with it.
It is what it is now. Let's do it."
And I think it worked out for them pretty well, because I do think it helped, honestly, especially because I mean, like when I went and asked the person at the theater if they had any left, they said no, and I blame SNL for that. You know, like
yeah.
Like the marketing, whether it's intentional or accidental or whatever, like I think that did a lot for making this like potentially one of the biggest sci-fi movies ever. Like,
yep, yeah. Especially this year, I don't think there's going to be a sci-fi movie to be as big as Dune Part 2 that will come out this year.
Right.
But especially like the amount of press that this movie was getting. Again, you have the positive reviews, word of mouth, and all of a sudden on the sidelines, here's this popcorn bucket that's making headlines, where I'm seeing part of the marketing is that the interviewers that were talking with the actors had mentioned, hey, have you seen this popcorn bucket?
Yeah,
what were your thoughts on this? Right. And like that's becoming memes of what they're saying about this. And and it's also just on a side note, the practicalities of this even functioning as a proper popcorn bucket doesn't make any sense to me. No. Like this is not a good system to pull popcorn out of. Like
I do think the teeth are rubber. Yeah. Like I think they're soft.
Such a it's weird.
Which
like such a pain in the ass
choice. But I think also makes it so that you can actually eat popcorn out of it.
It almost seems like that again. That it's a top, so you can pull it off, and then it's a normal popcorn bucket. Yeah. The top doesn't need to be there,
right.
But yet here it is in all of its glory for what it's worth, and just for the image alone, you can see that AMC says make it a Dune date night. What does that mean, AMC? What are you promoting there? Because the bottom photo is like it's almost like the bottom photo was like, hey. We're announcing we have this collectible popcorn bucket, and then the memes came out, and then we're gonna
I was just about to say the bottom is the idea, the top is the pivot and the execution.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
Yes. It's like, oh, okay, this is what's happening now, and it's funny in comparison. I saw Regal's merch, and they had a T-shirt. If you bought the T-shirt, you get a free popcorn, and they had this tin. It's a nice tin. Not meme worthy. I'll tell you that. There's no cover on that tin. It's like it's a full functioning popcorn bucket. And then the drink was like this skinny cup that had like the Dune stuff on it. And then like I think the top of it, like the topper had some design on it, but it wasn't resembling a sandworm, I don't believe. Where I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be the future of like they saw how well this marketing was, again, either intentional or not on this. So I don't know if moving forward, the goal is to try to replicate this again of having meme worthy merchandise to maybe also promote the movie as well, especially for the theaters. But anyway, it's interesting to say the least. and it gets a chuckle every time I see a meme about it. So with that, Chandler, we'll have your final thoughts on the movie, and where would you like to see part 3 go?
Yeah, I think this was a really great. It was an interesting shift from the first one, and also like an interesting kind of departure, because the first one is so faithful to the book. It was interesting to see them kind of depart from the book in the second one, but again, in a way that I think really paid off. And I am really curious to see now what happens with the third movie, because I think there's a lot of beats from the book that they can still hit and drive home and get the same sort of themes and concepts across. But I think we might see some interesting, almost more sort of like adversarial stuff with Chani. We might even follow Chani more than we follow Paul in the third movie.
Interesting.
I feel like they really were building her up as, maybe she is our protagonist now.
Interesting.
That would be an interesting turn to see Chani as the protagonist and Paul as like the main antagonist of the third movie. I don't know though. Like I said, as far as I'm concerned now, I'm pretty in the dark about where this thing is going, because it seems like they're taking some pretty decently sized liberties from the original story now. So I don't know. I don't feel like I know that much more than anybody else at this point.
Do you feel like that since Dune Part 1 and 2 was a company was kind of capsulating everything from the first book, do you feel like that the context in the second book can be now told in one movie? And do you also think that Denis will end it in a way that you don't necessarily have to adapt the other books, but like, I'm going to make a trilogy and not continue moving forward with the rest of the books?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you might kind of be able to see right here, the second book is probably less than half the length of the first book.
Okay.
So like definitely you can encapsulate that in one movie, especially with the way that they have been adapting it and cutting a lot of the like what in a viewing experience could definitely be seen as just chuff, just extra trimming the fat. I think they could do that. I don't think they're going to, like I said, I think now they are possibly just like telling their own story with the third one, based on what I'm seeing. But do
you think he would end it with 3?
Yeah. I think that's been the plan.
Yeah.
From day one. I think Denis Villeneuve has been pretty outspoken about the fact that he wants to do 3 of them and then be done with it.
Okay.
I don't think anybody would really want to see anything more than that. Right. Especially like if they did stay faithful to the books get pretty bizarre.
Like really out there sci-fi.
Yeah, like I'm talking about like human cat hybrid people and like a rival sort of dark Bene Gesserit that is like sex warriors. Like it's it gets really, I mean, a dude becomes a sandworm. It gets really, really strange, and I don't think it's something that's necessarily for like a general audience. So yeah, I don't think want to, and I don't necessarily think they should go past this third movie. But I'm really curious to see where it goes with what they've set up in this second one.
Well, Matt, I've got a few things that I need to say. First of all, I'm gonna make a very bold statement and say that I think that this is probably one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made, ever.
Okay.
I mean, you have Christopher Nolan like saying that this is one of the best since The Empire Strikes Back. That is, I mean, what a glowing review that is, to have Christopher Nolan say that about your movie. And I agree, between the sound design, the cinematography, like just the phenomenal performances, the makeup and hairstyling, particularly for Austin Butler. There's just so much to appreciate. The way they were able to tell such a complex story. I'm on board. I'm all in. And Villeneuve, I've always been a fan of his, and then this just like solidified it for me. Like more so than ever. Like this is easily gonna be in one of my top movies for the end of this year. I can't wait to go see it again. I'm gonna go 5 out of 5 stars. If I could give it a 6 star, I would.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I figure you're gonna go 5 out of 5. I'm not gonna argue with that. Like, if for me personally, I'll probably do like a 4.5. Because there's just again, this is more of an expectations thing, less about anything they did in this movie. That I would not get a half a star. But at the end of the day, that's on me for those expectations. And so, like, nothing the movie did that they kind of knocked it away. But I feel like this is the first time that I've walked into a Denis Villeneuve film and see that this felt like a cinematic event.
Yes,
that
needs to be
people
seen in
needed.
theaters.
Yeah, it needs to be seen in theaters. Again, I feel like he had a disadvantage with the first part because of the way that it was released. And I knew that he didn't want it that way either, but it's just kind of just how it played out. And it was a different feel to it. As Chandler was saying, like part 1 and part 2 definitely feel tonally a little bit different. But the part 1 definitely feels like a prologue to now part 2. You can easily start part 2 and be like, okay, Paul Atreides' family, this whole community is dead now. They wiped down his bloodline and his people, and it's the Baron's fault. And then they were able to meet up with the Fremen, and that's that. And like, yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. It's like, yeah, there's other things that happened that will be in context later, but for the most part, if you're looking just for Paul Atreides stories, you got that baseline within the first 2 minutes of the movie. And the rest you're able to follow along with it. And I think from there was a lot more to get out of it. And I think the pacing of this movie was done incredibly well to make sure there weren't a lot of down moments in there where, like, if you had those people in the audience who are like, I'm just here for the action. Like, you get it in spurts where it doesn't feel like you're quote unquote waiting too long for the next big action set piece, because they do just a great job with the pacing and the tone. You had your smaller, lighter moments, but then like the point where they were fighting and they were knocking down those thopters, the helicopter things.
The ornithopters.
Thank you. Like that between him and Chani, and like how they were going in between the big structure, and like that was
she blows a guy up from 2 feet away.
Oh, that was awesome. That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Ridiculous.
Like, it was just done so well that this feels like an event. Like, it feels like a good old big old blockbuster right now. Just like a movie you just want to root behind. And I think upon a second viewing, I think some of the things, my expectations about it will turn from like, you know what I didn't like about it, to like, oh, I see what they were going for, and I actually now respect it type of deal. And that's kind of where it lands on it. But I might not see this movie again in the theater, but I'll probably add it to the collection for sure.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. At least for me, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I feel like it's unfortunate because I know Denis said that it's going to be a while before we get a part 3. He wants to take a break, so we might be seeing maybe a good 4 years or so before we get the next one. Hopefully not that long. Hopefully you can,
But look, it was worth, to me, like the expanded time. And he's said in recent interviews that he's really against Hollywood, like giving, like they'll name release dates for movie before they even release directors. And he didn't say specifically, but we know obviously that that's a jab at like Marvel and the whole franchise movie machine. It's like they'll announce release dates and characters and everything and movie plot lines even before somebody's written a script, which is kind of crazy. But to us, that's normal. But
yeah,
this was well worth the wait, and I'd wait 5 years if he can give us the level of what he was able to give, or more of what he was able to deliver on Dune 1 and 2.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean it clearly shows, and it also, what a great move, because this movie was supposed to be out in November. By pushing it back primarily because of the writer's strike, and I'm not sure whose call that was, but like, hey, we already took a hit from the first movie. We're not doing this again. Yeah. We will push this movie back so we have a clear line. And what a way to do that, to be like, nothing's really out right now as the scale as this movie in the first week of March, and it's gonna stay like that. And the next film it's gonna even go toe to toe with is Ghostbusters Afterlife, which comes out in 3 weeks, and then after that it's competing with itself because it's going to be Godzilla x Kong, where you have both Warner Brothers and Legendary working together for another movie. So like, there's probably this next big competition is like handing off the baton on the box office. Is like, well, here you go. We had about a month to reign. Now it's your turn.
Do you think? But I think at that point that I think it's still going to be riding the wave. My early prediction, and obviously I could be wrong, but I think that this movie, when Godzilla x Kong, I think that this movie there's a potential for this movie to still be number one at that point.
That's a hard call. I feel like
how many weeks?
It's like a 3 week difference between.
I don't know.
Let's see.
I'm still feeling it. I could be wrong, but I mean, it's going to dominate for a while.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks before Ghostbusters come out. It's 4 weeks until Godzilla comes out. So. Like it has, and it's going to be for the first 3 weeks. It's going to be uncontested. Like there's nothing to the scale. It's going to be out. So like it's gonna rank in all that money, and then Sony's going to be like, hey, we out of Ghostbusters, and that's going to take a lot of people in as well because it's kind of similar to sci-fi. And then again, a very similar sci-fi movie comes out the week later. So I feel like if anybody should have moved release dates, it's Ghostbusters because I think they're losing out on the most because you're sandwiched between two big movies that a lot of people are going to go see. And then they're going to have to force to make a decision. But regardless, like it's going to make all the money. I would say by next week or by the end of the third week, it's probably going to be at over 500 million globally to start anyway. But yeah, anyway, that's our spoiler review on Dune Part 2. Chandler, thank you very much for spreading your knowledge and, to quote yourself, Duning all over this podcast for us.
Oh yeah,
we appreciated it.
We had a great time. At the end of the day, we found that it was a good thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
we really enjoyed having you on.
I loved it. Yeah, no, thank you guys. This was fun. I like this.
Thanks.
Now the question is, we missed one question, Ernesto. It's been a while since we've done this.
That's true. It's been a while since we had a first time guest. So
that's true.
As we ask every guest their very first time coming on, what is your favorite movie? Like your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, probably this one.
You know what? I will give you credit for that answer. Bonus before this movie.
And before Dune Part 1.
And before Dune Part 1.
I'll probably say like Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
Like that movie a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. And it warrants all the love for it as well.
Absolutely.
Also, we forgot to mention, is that a Dune knife tattoo that you have on you?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that is a Chris knife.
Dang! Look at that.
Yeah. I got that from the artist's name is Matt. He's at Tat Rotten on Instagram. Yeah, really, really great artist. And little Chris knife based on the design from obviously the Villeneuve movies.
Wow, that's incredible. That looks good.
Yeah, and to say that you became a fan 3 years ago and now you have it tatted on yourself, I mean, it just goes to show of like how this movie kind of influenced you to kind of go down this rabbit hole of like a whole bunch of other sci-fi stuff that came afterward.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty deeply absorbed in this for the past couple of years. Yeah.
Now the question is, you said you had a good time. Would you come back on for another movie?
Damn, you putting him on the spot. Oh, all right.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. There you go. All right. It's all the people at work. I can see it now. He's gonna work. He's, guys, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. He's like,
okay.
I hear him talking about this podcast all the time. He's pretty solid. He's having a time with it.
No, it's fun.
Then he goes back. He's like, but honestly though,
it's like I said I was coming back, but am I really gonna come back?
I mean, so it's like, sure, maybe for Dune 3, like in 5 years, I'll come back. But like,
if I remember.
Diaz. Who is
Decline.
Just ignore block. If you want more from us, you can always follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram. No, I'm losing. I lost all the tracks. Sorry. But thank you. I know it's like there's a rhythm here. Let's restart. If you want to follow us on our social media channels, you can follow us on our Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok page at Box Office Bingers, our X and Letterboxd page at Box Office Binger, and our Instagram and Threads page at Box Office_Bingers. You can see our lovely faces on our YouTube page, all of our shorts that we post on Instagram and TikTok, as well as Movie Showdown Mondays, and you can find out what new to stream on Fridays. It's all there, and as well as the latest entertainment news. We didn't go over any this week because there was none. Plain and simple. But yeah, thank you, Chandler, for joining us yet again. We really do appreciate it. Hope you can come back on. We had a blast having you on.
It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you.
Come back next week for more movie fun. I believe it's probably going to be our Oscar recap.
Yes, I believe so.
Episode, depending on when this airs or when this is released. We're doing an Oscar recap. If you haven't already, go back and listen to our Oscars predictions episode, which we did a deep dive in all 23 nominations and on who we feel like is going to win. And we actually had a chance to watch everything that was nominated, so that's pretty exciting. So go back and listen to that episode if you haven't already, and then go back and then listen to our recap of all the winners and see if we were right or wrong, because that's always a fun game we like to play. And then later on, we're going to go back into we're kind of wrapping up our awards conversation, and then go back into the big releases that March has in store for us. And we have guests lined up each and every week after that, Ernesto. So we're stacked.
Yeah, I know, we're pretty stacked because we went a while where it was just us, but it's always fun to bring somebody else on.
Absolutely, like Chandler.
Yeah,
and have a good time, a different perspective. There he is.
Hey.
Come back for next week for more movie fun you're not going to regret. And for that, I've been your host, Matt Diaz.
Been Ernesto Santos. See ya.